What is a hero? A mythological figure, often of divine descent, endowed with great strength or ability? An illustrious warrior? No. It's a person admired for achievements and noble qualities, one who shows great courage. Welcome to the What's a Hero podcast, where we dive deep into what a hero is and what makes them that hero. I'm your host, Ken Frownfelter, and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the world's most likely and unlikely heroes. You may have never heard of them before, and they most likely have never met you. But they all have one thing in common. They are ready to do whatever it takes to help make you better, even if it means sacrificing everything for you. Let's get into it.
This is episode 100 of the What's a Hero podcast with me, Ken Frownfelter. The book Miyamoto Musashi by Eiji Yoshikawa opens with the story of a young soldier broken and defeated after a major battle. He lay amongst thousands of corpses, wondering if this was his death. The only thing that revived him was the rain of a passing monsoon. He couldn't move. He couldn't even turn over to turn his upturned face to the sky. The rain was a blessing and a curse that he gasped like a drowning fish as he lay in his broken state. Have you ever been in a broken or fearful state, wondering if this was your limit, trying to figure out if you were done, attempting to determine what you had left to give? Could you go on? Could you defeat the enemy, wrestle that demon, climb that mountain? And if so, were you too afraid to do so? You see, fear stops us all. Fear builds a wall that we sometimes allow to be much bigger than it should be. I've seen fear in my life. I was in the Marines. I've been a logger, a mill worker, police officer for more than 17 years. And I've been afraid many, many times. I've had men try to kill me, and I've been in some really scary fights. But we're not going to talk about any of those today. Instead, I want to talk about yours truly. When I ask you, what are you afraid of? What is it you struggle with? What adversity do you face that keeps pushing you back, pushing you down, keeping you from fighting and moving forward? See, everybody's fight is different. Everybody's struggle is different. Everybody's adversity is different. Is it a divorce, or the loss of a loved one, a loss of a job, or the passing over of a promotion? Did you lose a home in a tragic accident? Did you get a flat tire while you were driving today? Did you get a poor grade on a test? Did you get turned down by that guy or girl that you asked out on a date? Are you struggling with suicidal thoughts, or not able to afford that car you want? See, our struggles are very different, as we are very, very different people. And so we all have a mountain to climb. And it is fear that is holding us back from climbing that mountain. Your mountain could be any one of those things I just mentioned, or it could be something totally different. I don't know each of your stories, but I do know you are facing things in your life that may seem insurmountable. What major thing do you wrestle with? And what is it that is holding you back from reaching your summit? What limits stand in your way? And are those limits self-imposed? Can you remove them if you adjust your thinking? Change the way you look at them? And that's an excerpt from a manuscript that I wrote. But there's a part in there that it says, I want to talk about me today. Actually, it says, I want to talk about you. But that's the trick. Today, I do have a guest in the studio per se, but I don't have a guest that we're going to talk to about them. Instead, you might remember this guest from episode 22, and you remember we spoke with a gentleman named Mike Vorberg, and Mike was one of those guys. He had that story about, just the life that he lived, the things that he did, and the big one that kind of stuck out was where his son got really sick, and they had to fly up to Portland in an airplane and get up there, and it was touch and go because it was really close that he almost lost his son. But he did all that in the attempt, and because of the request he gave to God, saying, "Hey, help me be closer to you. How can I be your man?" And by doing that, God said, "Okay, let's just make sure you're in it to win it." And that's where we're at. So we welcome Mike Vorberg back to the studio today. How are you, sir?
Doing good, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Last time we talked, we did it via Zoom. You are actually here today because you are here today, which is cool.
Well, what else was I going to do? I was either going to have to go run a hill or throw some weights around or hang out here and drink coffee. So.
Yeah. You know what? Why don't we do, we'll go run the hill after this.
Yeah. I was afraid of that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. So anyways, I know you guys are asking, where have I been? What's been going on? Why haven't we had regular podcast episodes? Work's been really busy. Obviously, a lot of things have come up. It is now 2024, and it's January, and I want to do what I can to get some episodes out. Some good stuff has happened for me, and I'm really proud of that. But some growth has happened as well. But one of the things, if you guys remember, last episode was with my uncle, and he told his story of just some cool things that happened for him, and it brings it a little bit closer to where I wanted to take the 100th episode, which is what you are listening to right now. And that 100th episode is going to be about a specific person. I am not going to do the interview this time. It's actually going to be Mike who's going to do the interview. So, sir, this is now the What's a Hero podcast, guest hosted by Mike Vorberg.
All right. My turn at the wheel, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, if I was to start an interview and ask questions, ask away, and following your podcast and how things have gone over the shows I've listened to, we always go into like this little nickname for the kid that starts their journey, little Kenny. And I don't know if that was your nickname growing up or if it was like Stumpy or or maybe it was like a Star Wars thing, like Chewie, because of all your Star Wars affection. But let's go with little Kenny. And so what was little Kenny like? How did little Kenny start out? Take us through that.
Actually, it was Kenny. All my cousins that know me from when I was a kid, my aunts and uncles and everybody, they all call me Kenny.
I lost $5.
Still. And when I was in school, there was there's another kid named Kenny, and I was Kenny F and he was Kenny W. And that was, first grade or whatever. But anyways, getting back to your question, I grew up Southern California. I'm actually a 6th generation Californian. My after my grandparents, my grandpa grew up in Maine, moved to California after the war, and he and my grandma got married. They lived in California, settled in San Fernando Valley, as did my dad's parents. Mm-hmm. And so my parents, they met each other there, and I was born in Tarzana, California, named after Tarzan, because the big old plot of land of Tarzana was actually owned by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And he, I guess, willed it or gave it to the city proper. And so they said, well, let's make this a city. And so it became incorporated within the San Fernando Valley. Nevertheless, worthless trivia. I have a ton of that.
I did not know that.
Anyways, so I was born there, and it just down the street, they filmed a ton of like the Karate Kid movies, just right down the street from where I lived. And
of course,
I mean, all that stuff like that. We saw some movie stuff all the time, and but I was always outside playing. if I could, I'd go inside to watch cartoons.
Mm.
I liked watching TV, but I mean, I would play with my, I'd play outside as much as I could. G.I. Joe and He-Man and everything from the 80s, Transformers. The 80s were a cool time, and everybody talks about that. Yeah, I got to live that, and it was always just going. Got in trouble a lot. One of the things that I always kind of dealt with was I was a little short, chubby kid, and I had a I don't know if it was a self-esteem issue or whatever, but it was just that kind of just lingered back there my whole life. Maybe it was I was the youngest of all the cousins until my one cousin came after I was 6 years old, but I spent my whole first 6 years just being the youngest and doing all stuff like that. So I grew up down there, and then just like every other kid, just trying to figure out what you're going to do. Hey, I'm going to play football. When you go and you get into high school and you play football, you realize, oh, you're not that good, and you try to do whatever sport, and you realize, your talents might be somewhere else, And, but I like the rough and tumble. I like to being outside, riding bikes, cool being a kid, riding bikes until the lights came on. And that's how you knew you had to go home. But you and your buddies just ride in the neighborhood back in the 80s. It was just the coolest thing to do. I'd play football and stuff like that with my cousins and my brother, and we would just go do that stuff. And I'd always be the one that's getting tackled by these bigger kids. And I would, believe it or not, I did not like getting hurt. So that may have been one of the things that held me back in football, because I was just too shy of getting hit at the time. Nevertheless, you go through all that stuff and you learn all the things, and you determine that you like girls, and you figure out what it is your thing is, and you still don't know. In middle school, you don't know. In high school, you may not know. And, but I did know that G.I. Joe was like one of my favorite things out there. That was, I would play with those guys out in the dirt, and I'd be outside just with my action figures all through the 80s and just going into that and realizing that was so cool. So that actually built up a lot of patriotism in me. And I really liked the whole idea, because it was, I guess it did what it was supposed to do. It was their way of building up the military. I guess the media or the government or whoever said, hey, we got to put a good spin on the military guys. So that's when they developed G.I. Joe. And it did its job, because it instilled patriotism in me. It instilled a desire to go do some stuff, get yourself stronger, get yourself mentally more available to be able to do that stuff. And so it just developed a thing that made me want to go, ultimately decide to want to go in the military. And, and I had that, probably fourth or fifth grade that I wanted to do that. And just that patriotism, that I wanted an American flag on my backpack, and I wanted, a patch or whatever. And it wasn't big like it is now. You get a backpack and you get a patch and it has the American flag, and it's easy to do. They didn't have that back in the 80s. And if they did, it just wasn't easily gettable, because we didn't have the internet. We didn't have all that stuff like that. So if you didn't see it, you didn't get it. But we were in the Boy Scouts, my brother and I, and we did a bunch of stuff there. And so there's ways to get American flag patches and all the stuff that we needed to do for that. So that was actually an assist to that whole world of the either tactical or the outdoorsy and stuff like that. So
what did your folks do?
My mom and dad got divorced when I was pretty little. I don't remember how old I was. I was probably 6 or something like that. And my mom I remember her working at a bank about that age, when I was that age. My dad was in the military. He was in Vietnam, and then when he got out, he joined the reserve. So he's still in. So he had reserve weekends that he would go. He flew helicopters. When he wasn't in the reserves, during his regular job, he worked for Rockwell and Hughes Aircraft and the big businesses like that the Boeings, and the Hughes is another one because it's Howard Hughes's company, and it's Rockwell was I don't know if they were a business and then they got taken over by Hughes or whatever. And there's a whole bunch of stuff to it. I remember my dad working for those companies, and I know he did HR for them, but he also got, oh man, what was it? Clients that made microchips for satellites and space shuttles and all that stuff like that. Did a lot of work for that stuff, for the space shuttle and stuff like that. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was, I do know he did HR for a while there. And I remember him saying, looking at resumes is not all it's cracked up to be. It is annoying. Nevertheless, so that's what they did. When they got divorced, we went and saw my dad every other weekend, and my mom was, she was kind of our rock for a while, and it was just always where we were going to go. And so we lived in Orange County in California, and then we had to, at a certain point, we had to move back. We lived with my grandparents in the San Fernando Valley, and then ultimately, my mom married my stepdad, and my dad married my stepmom at the time, and they still lived about an hour apart from each other. So they'd come pick us up on the weekends and things like that. But it was always, I wanted to go play outside. But when I went to my dad's, there's only so much, because we didn't have a lot of toys there. We didn't have a lot of things there, and I couldn't carry a ton of all my G.I. Joe guys with me, right? And so I got into a lot of TV watching and movies that I watched when I was a kid. And my dad had Raiders of the Lost Ark on VHS. And I burned out that tape. I watched that. It was every weekend. I would get up early on Saturdays and I'd watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. Sometimes I watch cartoons. More often than not, in my dad's house, it became known as Raiders because it was on all the time. Are you watching Raiders again? Because it was just what it was. I just thought that was a cool thing. Once again, outside doing stuff, just the action, the adventure, the exploration of what that was. So I can recite that whole movie for you if you need to. We can just.
I'm sure. Well, we're the same age, and I've probably seen that movie, at least a dozen times, and it was a huge part of, I think, our generation of those epic movies that kind of shaped and defined the adventure-seeking kids that we did, activities outside and in that fashion. Going back to the divorce, how did you digest that as a 6-year-old kid? How does that play in? What were you able to make of that? How does that shape you now? And at the time, what is your takeaway from that?
I don't know. I just knew that it was, as a kid, a lot of stuff, when things get thrown your way, kids are so pliable. I guess this is the rules. This is what happens now. Mm-hmm. And I think I was so young that I was still thinking about myself, and that's all I thought about. And it wasn't, I remember us having a house, in this city called Costa Mesa, and it had a pool in the backyard and all this different stuff. And from my bedroom, I could see the fireworks from Disneyland because we were that close to it, and there wasn't the big growth of trees and stuff they have now. I bet that house, I know it's still there, but I bet they couldn't see anything like that. Mm-hmm. There's just so much other growth down there. But during that time, there was that. And I remember just being out in the cul-de-sac that we lived on and the kids riding bikes. And I remember that. And that's what I remember. I remember going in with my mom and dad, going and seeing Empire Strikes Back in the theater. And that was like the last big movie that we went as a family and went and saw. But I don't remember too much of all of that, because it was just like, oh, this is what it is. And, oh, hey, we're doing this now. Okay. And then I just adjusted. And it wasn't until later, I would say much later, that I started, having the introspection of what divorce does, especially as, when I got my own divorce, you start realizing what all that does for you and how that affects you. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it was anything that really got me. I guess this is what we're doing and this is how we do it. And so we were going back and forth. I saw more of the stress and the struggle on my mom's face as she'd take us to school or church or Boy Scouts or whatever it is we were doing. And just, I remember Christmases were lean, things like that. You'd get one He-Man character or something like that for Christmas. And my mom did everything she could to make sure Santa Claus brought presents. Mm-hmm. But, I don't, I more or less maybe followed my brother's lead too. And I think it affected him way more than it affected me. He's older than me by 3 years. And I think it affected him more, just feeling like the alienation or the pain of it. Like, did he do something wrong to cause this, And I watched him and I felt like an outsider watching how it was affecting everybody. And I was just like, well, I'll just be over here playing with my G.I. Joes and my He-Mans and my Star Wars guys. And you guys, I don't know what's going on. Just let me know where we're going. Can I take my Millennium Falcon with me or whatever, So, and it wasn't until my mom and my dad got remarried that I realized the dynamic of a husband and wife in the home, a mom and a dad in the home who wanted to see their kids grow and guide them and all that stuff like that. Because I think there's only so much, and this isn't a knock on anybody, but there's only so much a mom can do. She doesn't understand sometimes the intricacies of boyhood that like a father might know, right? Or even a stepdad. Not to knock anything like that, but then the same thing works. You see these guys trying to raise their daughters and they don't know the intricacies of the feminine that a girl goes through as they're trying to grow too. And that's why you need that wife and stuff. And so I remember the things happening where my mom and dad were just trying to be amicable with each other. And my brother and I were just like, are we going over this way? Or what are we doing? We're going here? Okay, well, I guess we're going over here this weekend. And we're going here this weekend. And, and it was cool. There would be times we were at my dad's house. And I remember one time we were there. We're trying to do stuff. We were getting ready to, we would go, he didn't have a lot of money at the time. Obviously, after divorce, things happen. And I remember he had a van. And we would hide in the van. My dad and my brother would go into the drive-in movie, and my dad would take us to the drive-in movie on Fridays when he'd pick us up, and we'd go do that. And I'd hide in there because they weren't sure if they were going to if they were going to charge by the vehicle load or by the number of people in there. Mm-hmm. So we'd hide in there. I remember the first time I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark was when my dad picked us up on a Friday, and we walked into. And he took us to, we're going to go see this movie. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I walk into the theater, and it was like a single aisle down the center of the theater. And I walk in, and we were there a little bit late, and it was the scene where the big boulder comes rolling after him. And I stopped in the middle of the aisle, and I was, hooked from that point on, like, this thing, what is this? And that sort of stuff. So we had good times. My dad, he'd take us out fishing, deep sea fishing and stuff almost every weekend sometimes, that we were with him. With my mom, we would always go to Boy Scouts and stuff like that. So it was just I knew this is what we did here and this is what we did here. They weren't so different that there's different rules but there was just different things that we did. And I think that's the thing that got me is, hey, everybody's different and we do different things at different places and it works out.
You see a lot of victims come out of divorce when it comes to kids and fatherless homes, and you hear about that and the tremendous, amazing heroes that single mothers are made when they're forced into that position to take on that duty. And I see with you as you're working through this is that you don't see yourself as a victim. You don't see yourself as somebody who had it worse than anybody else. You look at the silver lining. You look pragmatically at how this worked out and realistically at how you processed and worked through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's significant, and it's rare for you to look at the positives that come out of that and have that not define you. It's a circumstance that happened within your family, and you guys made lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
How about school in general, academia? How was Ken's grades going through school?
They were terrible. I was not the smart kid.
Uh-huh.
I had friends who were. Actually, I've had a guy on here, John Hartle, and he and I were best friends growing up and in school, and he was smart. He had the A's, and I knew, and he was in those groups of kids that just.
So
knew
you
stuff.
copied him the whole way through school.
I had to. No, they were always here's the top scores for the class or whatever, and these are the kids that are always, and little Kenny Frownfelter, little Kenny F he was never one of those kids. I never got the A's. I never got the, and if I did, I felt pretty good about myself, but I was never in that top echelon. And I was a little bit, like I said, just that chubby, short kid. And that was always I felt like I was always a step behind everybody. So it wasn't the victimhood from the circumstances that happened at home. I just felt like I couldn't keep up with some of the other kids. I thought, am I dumb? I'd ask my mom. For whatever reason, during the 80s, they had a lot of shows that were everybody's adopted, Punky Brewster and Webster and Different Strokes, and everybody's adopted. And so I'd always ask my mom, am I adopted? Thinking I was dumber and I had some kind of lesser thing going on because I couldn't keep up with these kids at school. They were also more athletic than I was, and I wasn't. And I'm like, why am I not that way? But I would still try to keep up with them. But it wasn't, I never felt so bad that I'm like, oh, poor, woe was me. Just like there's that lingering self-doubt or that lingering low self-esteem, but it didn't permeate. It didn't take over because I was like, no, I want to do this. This is fun. And I want to, hey, that's cool. I like that. I want to go after those things. And so, but the cool thing was that my friend John, he was smart and he was athletic and he was all these things, and all the girls, they liked John. But me, I was just like, oh yeah, whatever. But he was never one of those guys that held it, would hold it against or anything like that. He says he would always just be like right there, checking on me, like, hey, are you coming? Like, and like, oh yeah. He would always make sure that I was involved because for whatever reason, he and I we were supposed to know each other on this planet. There's those people God put in your life.
And based upon the picture you paint of yourself being this little chubby, soft kid that can't get hit by a football with terrible grades, and John keeping you close to him, I think it could be nothing less than the explanation of absolute pity.
That's true.
John, God bless John. He sounds like a saint.
He's like, let's take care of this. I guess I have this burden now.
No,
yeah.
There's some redeeming qualities there, I'm sure. You had a Raiders of the Lost Ark tape that you let everybody watch, but
no, I just stayed in my basement and watched that over and over.
Yeah, that checks out too. You mentioned as a kid you had gone to church. Was that a regular thing? And how did that shape you, or at what point did that become your faith instead of mom's faith?
Yeah, so we grew up with my mom and my grandma and everybody Catholic. And we went to Mass, and we did the midnight Mass on Christmas, and we went to Catholic school up until 5th grade. And we were Catholic. And then my mom met my stepdad, and she ultimately married him. But I remember the conversation she had one time, and she was saying, she goes, oh yeah, he's a Christian. He doesn't, but what he believes, and I thought, okay, Catholics are Christians, because I didn't know anything else when I was a kid, because they don't pray to Mary, and they don't pray to the saints and things like that. And I'm like, really, how's that work? And it was more of a, instead of like, well, that's dumb. It was more like, well, how does that work? Why don't they do that? Well, because of this reason. And the reason was that you pray to God. The idea is that God is God and Jesus is God, not the saints, not Mary. Mary did great things, but she's not God. Neither are the saints, neither are the apostles, neither are all these other people that the Bible mentions. They're not God. You can't pray to them to come and save you. The only one that's going to do that is Jesus. And for whatever reason, that made so much sense to me. It was just like, well, yeah, I know God is God, and all these. That means I don't. And what I thought was cool was I don't have to go and we don't have to do the rosary anymore. We don't have to do Hail Marys. We don't have to. I don't have to ask this priest who is another man for his forgiveness in lieu of God. I didn't sin against this guy. I sinned against God, but I don't have to ask for this forgiveness from this other man. And I realized that it becomes a relationship that you have with God that is your spirit, and not just your religion, And so that really instilled in me the idea that you have a relationship with God. You don't have a religionship with God. And it was, for whatever reason, it made so much sense to me. It wasn't something, because I just knew that God is there. For whatever reason, I knew that I've always been, my grandma made sure that we always knew that Jesus, she had the pictures of Jesus on her walls, that one where he's like looking up into the, and it's very Western looking Jesus, right? And so that was always there. And she would always make sure that we said our prayers and did all these different things. So I knew that was a thing, but once it became a thing where it can be yours and it's your relationship with God, that made a huge difference to me. And obviously, as a kid, you do all these things where you're like, I'm going to get in trouble. I got to try these things out and whatever. But I always knew that when the trouble came, I can pray to God. If I had some thing that I needed to do, I prayed to God. I remember I was going to get in trouble one time, and it was just like, God, please let me get home before the phone call from school or whatever. Right? When do you ever hear of an 11-year-old crying and praying to God for his intercession? Whether it's grades or getting in trouble at school or whatever, but how many 11-year-olds pray for that? And I just knew, and I was on my bike on my way home, and I just knew that I can pray to God, and I knew he would answer. And so not too long before that, we had, my stepdad had talked with us about it and kind of explained how the relationship works. And my brother and I were both shortly thereafter baptized, because I knew I knew it was right. And so ever since then, it's not, and some people might say, oh, you were brainwashed into this, or you were, no, there wasn't any brainwashing. There wasn't any, this is what we do, and this is how it is. And I wasn't expected, if I was in my parents' house, there's rules that we did, but I wasn't expected, you will pray and you will do your religiosity. It wasn't any of that. It was just, we don't do that here. We don't cuss in the house. We don't excessively drink in the house. You don't do that. And so it came down to understanding the reason we don't do those things is because the agreement we have with God, that's how we're going to hold ourselves, because he's asked us to do that. And so from the time I was, I don't know, you're going to say 10 years old, is probably when I realized that that's mine. And then you fast forward, and I know I talked about, when I was in school, I played ball and all those different things, but I ultimately joined the Marine Corps. And say 3 months after I graduated high school, I was going to boot camp. And I'm at boot camp, and I remember we just got off the plane. We were getting on the bus from the airport to the base. And I had the worst mouth. I cussed every other word at that point. 18-year-old kid, everything, all this different stuff. And you hear everybody else talk about it. And I started getting a little bit nervous that, oh man, this is really happening. And I'm sitting in my seat on the bus while everybody else is kind of filling in. And I just had this peace come over me. And I was in the back by myself, and I had this peace come over me that it was almost like I don't know, I didn't hear an audible voice, but this audible, or this spirit come over me. And it gave me it was the agreement at that moment that I had with God, that he said, if you stop cussing, you will get through this just fine. I will be with you the whole way. I need you to stop cussing. And I said, okay. I mean, it was like that. I mean, when you habitually just, every other word is an F-bomb or every other word is something, all of a sudden you stop. Not like, and just from 1 minute to the next. And I said, okay. So from that point forward, do I slip every once in a while? Sure. But you hit your hand with a hammer or something like that. You hit your thumb with the hammer. Or you have some kind of struggle like that. Yeah, that's painful. But and so you say those words every once in a while. But it was almost immediate that, okay, he came to me first saying, I need this from you, and I will do this, as opposed to me always going there, Lord, if you'll just do this, I'll be that didn't happen. I had this. And so that's when I realized this is real. The Lord's real. God's real in my life. And he's yearning for me to reach out to him, and he's yearning for me to be his man. And so, that was, going through all those things, but that was the first moment that I realized that, my relationship with him is, he and I have something, and it's not somebody else's idea.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you put that, and anecdotally, it demonstrates the relationship and the constant dialogue. It may be something as just, I want to be more obedient, to be aligned with sanctification, to honor you.
Right. And
that's an example of that. Is just, let's fine tune and it's not what the world thinks a Christian should look at. It's just what God has for you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so many things can derail you. So many things can take you off course and become unattractive to the kingdom, versus you could be that, if you will, not that you are a sweet smelling guy, but believers can be a sweet aroma, where it's an attractive essence in the sense of your being, and your personality and your character that can draw people to the famous slogan, go out and preach the gospel, and sometimes with your words.
Yeah. Right.
It's just how you live your life is what can be actually something that draws people into understanding there's a relationship with your Creator, and it's not for your time on earth, because that's short. Mm-hmm. It's for eternity. Yeah. But the shaping of you with just something is just clean it up a little bit, because you allow an avenue for the enemy to do work by little things like
right.
So the Marine Corps, that's not playing around with the Boy Scouts anymore. You join the Marine Corps. How's that decision take off, and then what happens? Take me through that.
That was obviously, the military, the G.I. Joe thing growing up, the patriotism, all that stuff like that. I knew I was going to go in the military. I knew I was going to do something. The trick was, am I going to go to the Army? Am I going to go to the Marines? I never thought about wanting to go in the Navy. And, cause I did a whole bunch of deep sea fishing when I was a kid, and being out in the ocean, out in the middle of the ocean. I mean, between California and Catalina, and then even out, you're way out there, and got a lot of seasick and did all this. I just wasn't a big Navy fan. I don't know where I got the idea that the Marines would be better, but the Air Force, I wasn't. My grandpa was in the Air Force, but I wasn't. It just wasn't. I wasn't drawn to it. So I wanted to go do the whole shooting guns and rough and tumble thing, like the kid that I was. And so it was the Marines or the Army. My dad was in the Army. My brother was in the Army. And I initially first went to go talk to the Army recruiter. And I had a friend, however, who he had joined the Marines. And so I had talked to the Army recruiter, and they helped me figure out getting my ASVAB taken care of and stuff like that. And then at school, there was the Marine Corps recruiter had come by, and he had a table set up in the Commons and stuff like that. And I went up to talk to him about, oh yeah, my friend's in the Marines and blah, 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 blah. He's like, are you going to join? I said, oh no, I'm going to the Army. He goes, and he didn't take it as like, why? It wasn't like that. He was just like, well, think about us. You want to come, want me to show you what you can do and blah, blah, blah. And all right, whatever. Knowing, I'm going to shine this guy on, and I'm going to go in the Army. And I go in there, and I go to talk to the recruiter. Well, they was all in the same building. Like the Marines were right across the hall from the Army. And the Army guys that I had talked to previously about helping with my ASVAB and all that stuff like that, they're like, hey, Frownfelter, what are you doing? I said, I was going to talk to this guy real quick. And they had the idea like, well, what are you doing? Right. And so I said, well, I was just going to talk to him. Well, when you get done there, come back over here. I was like, all right. I go over there, and sure enough, he just got his hooks in me. And it wasn't the whole, we're going to hook you up, you're going to be the best ever. All they had was one little cheap video, the Marines back in the early 90s. They had a cheap video, and it was narrated by Gerald McRaney. He was the guy that was Major Dad. He was in Simon and Simon. Mm-hmm. And if you can go back to the 80s, you'll know these, or you can Google them, those of you that weren't there. Nevertheless, that's what what we knew of the Marines. And we knew they went to Grenada, and we knew they kicked butt on Iwo Jima and all these things like that. But the more modern Marines, they didn't have any kind of videos, and they had this 20-minute narrated by Gerald McRaney video on VHS. And you watched it, and it was the whole, grainy and everything like that. And you're like, cool. And they said, if you really want to get an idea of what the Marines are, watch Full Metal Jacket. And I said, really? I'd never seen it. And they're like, yeah, that first part of the movie where they're in boot camp, that's real. And actually, it really is. It is as real as anybody can get for it. They're not you don't have ammo, and you're not going to have anybody shoot you. However, that is as real for the day-to-day as Marine Corps boot camp is. And so I was like, okay, watch it. And I just got into it, right? Even though the Army, I went back to talk to the Army guys, and I said, yeah, okay. And they thought they still had me. I was like, something about the Marines just had me. So knowing that I was going to do one of the two, I didn't have the grades for, actually by my junior and senior year, I had all A's, which was not something that I had previous to that. I think even in my junior year, I got honor roll. And I was like, first time in my life, I got on the honor roll, and I didn't, no idea. But I just knew that I'm going to go in the military. And so that was my thing. And that's what I did, because I knew that's what I wanted to do. What I did find out was that the Marines are nothing like G.I. Joe. You look like it, but it's not.
So what'd you do? What happened in the Marine Corps? The Marine Corps career didn't pan out the way you probably anticipated going in.
No, I had suffered a small injury when I was about 12 or 13 in my knee, and it was good. It kind of what I thought healed up and all this different stuff. Go in, and I went through all the stuff and the testing and all that stuff like that. And hey, you're good to go. Clean bill of health. Go in. And I thought I was in great shape. And I was actually in physically pretty good shape. I ran a lot. I lifted weights. I did the things that I knew how to do all that stuff. And I was in actually fairly okay shape. I go in the Marines, and for being a short, chubby little kid, I kind of got into that part where, doing football, doing all these sports and trying to be active. I learned how to work out, and I learned how to run, and I learned how to do all that stuff. However, my legs were still short. I actually, for having short legs, I'm only 5'6". Having short legs, I actually went to state in the 4x400, and I won my heat for that. So, I actually can run fairly fast for these short little legs. Well, I get in the military, and I go in and get through boot camp, and I'm going through what's called Marine Combat Training, which is the class that you do after boot camp, because every Marine is an infantryman first. And I don't care if you're a cook or you play the tuba in the band or whatever. If they say, hey, we're going to war, you're going to trade your tuba in for a rifle. You're going to trade your spatula in for a rifle. Every Marine is an infantryman first. And so...
Now, is this down in Pendleton or Lejeune? Or?
Yep.
Okay.
So everybody on the west side of the Rockies, the Mississippi, goes to Camp Pendleton or goes to MCRD San Diego, which is just about an hour, 45 minutes south of Camp Pendleton. And everybody on the east side of the Mississippi goes to Camp Lejeune. We were in Oregon and California, and so that's where I got to go. And I didn't mention this, but we moved to Oregon when I was 15 from California. And just because my stepdad had gotten a job in Oregon and as a pastor of a church. And so that's where we ultimately landed, and that's where we kind of sit now. But I still have all my family down there, so I go down there all the time. Nevertheless, so I go to San Diego. I'm at Camp Pendleton, and I'm doing all these different things. And while I was there at MCT, I beat the crap out of my knee. And that thing that happened when I was 12, 13 kind of reared its ugly head again. And this happened to be at the same time that President Clinton was downsizing the military. He was closing bases. He was doing all this stuff. This is the mid-90s. And so I'd gone and seen the orthopedic doctor and stuff like that, and they're looking at my knee and all this different stuff, and they say it was one of those things. We're gonna get you out of your contract because you can't operate on that knee right now. And I'm like, really? They said, yeah, if it heals up, yeah, you might be able to come back, but right now we're gonna, because of the whole closing bases and getting people out of their contracts, they were downsizing the military, and I happened to be one of those guys. So I was in little longer or more than a year in the Marine Corps, and then sure enough, I get out with this busted knee for a little while, and now I'm trying to figure out what am I going to go do. I have no idea what I'm going to go do.
How old are you at this point?
19, 20, something like that. And I just tried to figure out what I was going to do. I had a girlfriend, and she lived in a sleepy Southern Oregon town. And I figured, you know what? I'm just going to go marry her, and we'll have a great life. It's going to be easy.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, because, 19-year-old logic always works. And so with her, we initially planned that she was going to come down and we'll get married while I'm in the Marines, and I was going to go to 29 Palms, and that's where we would live for the first however long we were going to live there, and that didn't work out. So I move up to where she was, and I'm going to tell everybody a secret real quick, and that is never move somewhere for a girl. Now, if you're already with them and you both choose, hey, let's go here, that's one thing. But if you uproot your entire life to go over to that person, think twice at least. And so I move to where she's at. We get married shortly after she was wanting to have kids right away. And I'm like, whoa, I'm not even thinking about that. I want to do some stuff with life. No, you get married. And the reason you get married is to have kids. Well, I got married to spend time with you more often, but okay. I was pretty easily swayed for whatever reason back then. Maybe because I was a dumb 20-year-old or 19-year-old. And so, but we have kids. And I have my son first, obviously, and he's just the best thing in the world. He was my best friend. His whole, just first 10 years, it was like we were almost inseparable. He was just he's the best thing that happened to me up until my daughter. And she came about 2 years after him, and she was, once again, I remember saying these words. I said, I remember my ex-wife being pregnant, and she says, I mentioned how I was a little bit nervous about the whole thing with her. And she goes, why? I said, I love my boy so much. I don't know if I'm going to have enough love to share with Katie now. And she goes, oh, you will. And I'm like, man, it really weighed heavy on me. Sure enough, my daughter comes, and I adored that little girl. She had this big old tuft of black hair on her head, and she was had a full head of hair. We were able to put it in it looked like Boo from Monsters, Inc. We were able to do that by the time she was, I don't know, 6 months or whatever. She just had so much hair on her head. Mm-hmm. And unlike her brother, he looked bald for the longest time, So, but otherwise, they're just, it's amazing what those kids do, how they really build something that you didn't know you had, the ability to give something you didn't know you had, and the love that you have for another human being. It's amazing where that comes from and how that develops, especially when you didn't have a plan for that. I was like, no, I want to go do some living, but then the kids come along, and that's all. I focused on that. It was work, so the kids can be good. It was work, so we can go do stuff with the kids. It was spend some time with the kids, do what they want to do. You guys want to learn how to ride bikes. You guys want to go to the park. You want to go do blah, blah, blah. And I think we went to the park all the time. I would, try to stay in shape. So I'd run, and I'd have one of those big old, 3-wheel strollers, and I'd push that thing up hills, and the kids are in there. And I remember them sitting in there the longest time as I'd go running with them and do that stuff. And it was just my intent to do things with them and get them involved in doing things and living life too.
And were you working at this time?
I had gotten a job at a mill, and like a lumber mill, and I made plywood. I did just about every job during the time that I did work there in that, except for in the finishing end where they, sand it all down and then prepare it to be shipped. But I did all the, taking plywood from the time that it was just sheets of veneer to the time that they made the plies and pressed it.
So 2 little kids. What's the age difference?
2 years.
Okay. And did you work some nights and graveyard shifts and things like that?
All of it. Yep.
Yeah.
All of it.
So putting it together, you're up in the morning, you want to go to bed, and you've got little kids. And do you recall times or seasons in life where you're just absolutely exhausted, but you pull it together for your kids and do the dad thing?
Yeah. Well, there was one time my son, my daughter hadn't been born yet. My ex-wife may have been pregnant with her, but I remember I'm laying in bed because I would get off at on swing shift midnight or whatever, and I remember laying in bed and still sleeping at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, whatever. And I didn't normally go right to bed when I got home, so I'd go to bed maybe 1 or later. Anyways, and I'm laying in bed and I just feel this little hand on my hand, because I'm right on the edge of the bed. And I open my eyes, and my son, he hadn't even started talking yet. Well, I mean, just a little bit. He knew a little bit of words, but he goes, "Hi, buddy." Right? And because I used to say, "Hey, buddy." I used to call him Buddy and Bubba all the time. Mm-hmm. That was his name. And he just knew, that's what we are. So he had to go wake me up so he could spend time with me. And I remember that. I was just so exhausted. And then the other times of just being just exhausted of come home from work, because there was a point I got on day shift, and I'd pick them up from school and they want to play, or they want to go to the playground at the school, or they want to, just do whatever. And it was, okay, let's go, let's do it, and you're trudging yourself. But, the important thing is they learned how to ride their bikes. Mm-hmm. They learned how to be the leaders of the other kids they hung out with in the neighborhood, because their dad was present with them. I spent time with them. I went out of my way to no, you guys can't do that. And I knew all their kids, their friends' names. And they would say, "Hey, can these kids spend the night?" Kids were always spending the night on the weekends at our house because we were always there. I'd make sure that we were present to always be there with them.
So raising little kids and going through school, high school, getting to the point of where you're working, you're a dad, and you'd been in the military, and you tried a few things in life, and you've been around the block. At some point, a young man, and certainly a young dad, having more energy than the older dads usually is the case. But is there a time where you feel like, okay, what does it take to become a man? At what point am I a man? It's not, I'm 18, I'm now a man, or I'm in the military, I'm now a man. I'm married, I'm now, that doesn't apply. That's not the real case. And some guys never get it, and they never become a man.
Yeah.
At what point do you have like the flagship where it's like, this is the season, this is the time where I feel like a man?
Man, it was a while. It was a while after that. I didn't feel like a man. I couldn't say that you're just making jokes or whatever. Hey, this man stands before you. It would be weird for me to have said that in my 20s, that I'm a man. Even saying it to myself at the time, I couldn't say it. I would say it wasn't even until after my 30s, that I got into my 30s, that I started realizing, hey, you're a man. You need to do the things that men do, and not drink whiskey and smoke cigars and, things like that. But I mean, you have to, I just, during my 20s, I realized I don't go out party. You don't do it. You spend time with your kids. I didn't realize, but that's what a man does. But my internal dialogue for myself was, you're your own man, and you don't have to do things to impress people. You don't have to do things to explain to people. You don't have anything to explain in regards to that. And I realized as I'm going through all those things, oh, that's what a man does. Oh, I am my own man. Oh, I'm a man now, and I have things that I can share with other people. I just knew that I had something else going on because of all the going back and forth with my parents, my dad and my stepdad, being there, but there was always some contention because he was not my dad and I'm a teenage kid and I, wouldn't know whatever. I thought to myself, you know what, no matter how bad or how much I thought it could have been better as a kid with my parents, with my dads, I'm going to be even better, no matter how good it was. So I can take the good from both of them and I can do those things, but then I wanted to build on that as well. Mm-hmm. And I realized that, but I didn't realize that's what a man did. I realized that was my obligation, but I didn't realize and see myself as a man still doing those things. And so I still had some, like I said, that deep-seated self-esteem issues that I always dealt with. Mm-hmm. So it was some time into my 30s that I realized, hey, you're a man and you're your own man, and you need to own that.
Yeah. And if you were to take the principles of what it is that makes a man, could you break those down as far as where do you land on that? What is it that defines manhood?
I could do it now. At the time I couldn't, but it's that, like I said, there's an obligation. One side of it is obligation. You're a man. Your job is to be a leader in your home and with your family, and not a dictatorial leader, but a leader who wants to see other people succeed. There's a guy named Patrick Bet-David, and he has a saying. He says there's 4 kinds of people in the world. There's adders, subtractors, multipliers, and dividers. The subtractors will come in and they will just be those people that knock other people down. They're always negative. You walk in the room, it's like, oh my gosh, there's a spirit of negativity just with this person. That's the subtractors. The dividers will come in and they will get in and try to separate you from whatever. If you succeed, they want to pull you down. The world to them is a zero-sum game, right? And so I thought, I don't want to be a divider and I don't want to be a subtractor, but an adder, they're the kind of people that will always come in and they'll be You'll be in a room with them and they'll support you, and they'll be like, oh man, that was great. I really like that. And they're that shoulder you can cry on, and they're that person you can lean on, and they're the person that always has a ray of sunshine, and you leave the room and after being in the room with them, and they're like, you feel good about yourself because it was such a positive interaction. Mm-hmm. That's where we get the adder. And then the multiplier is like an adder, but better. He will go ahead and become this. He'll call you up and say, hey, you know what? I just saw this thing. This would be right up your alley. You might think about investing into this, or, hey, this is great. When you start succeeding, they are glad for you. They don't want any part. They don't want anything of it for them. They just want to support you and cheer you on as you succeed in life. And so there's those 4 different kind of people. And I didn't realize that. I just learned about this a couple years ago, but I realized I didn't want to be a negative or dividing type of person. I would be positive, and I wanted to be positive, and I wanted to do what's right. And I wanted to be somebody that people could be encouraged by, that I could say encouraging things to them, or I would be able to, just try to be positive for them. And I didn't realize that, but I realize now that a real man wants to see others succeed. A man wants to build other people up because he's developed knowledge and he's developed wisdom to be able to build other people up and share knowledge and see them grow and become better. So you have a leader, you have a builder, you have somebody that is aware of what's going on around them, especially with people they have a relationship with, your wives, your kids, whatever. And if you are open to that, and you're open to what's going on, you're going to pay attention, and that's going to be the man that you need to be. Because once you see the things that they have, the things they need to go to, and things that they're building on, you know which way to help guide them and keep them in their lane. And I'm not talking about stay in your lane type of thing, but the minute you start veering off track from your goals, you're outside of your lane. And how easy is it for you to go somewhere else if you start veering? It's like shooting a gun. You go off just by an inch, you're going to miss that target. Well, if you start veering off by an inch, by the time, if your goal is 20 years away or 5 years away, you're going to be miles off of that target, and you don't want to do that. So that's, I think, another thing a man needs to do. He needs to be the leader. He needs to be a guider. He needs to be a confidant. He needs to be somebody that is aware of what's going on, and a relationship builder. And it's whether it's with his friends, it's whether it's with his wife, his kids, whatever, the people in your life you need to be building a relationship with. And so as I look back on it now, I see that those are the things that we need to be developing in our men. Additionally, the no quit attitude, hey, things are difficult. You don't get to walk away at this point. You need to push into that. And so I remember one thing is I tested to become a police officer throughout I'd say from the time I was 25. And I back in the 90s, it was difficult. In the early 2000s, it was difficult because when you'd go to testing for police officers, the room would be filled, 150 people, maybe 3 positions. And I remember one of the things when I finally got in, somebody had said to me, the reason we liked you is because you're so persistent. We talked to you afterwards and you were still positive about the idea. Your persistence really got you this far. And that persistence was no matter how many times I failed the test or I didn't pass the oral board or whatever the case was, I still said, oh, well, I'm going to wait till the next time they have it open and I'll do it again. And that persistence always made it a thing. So that's another side. Another thing is persistence in knowing what your goal is and going after it and focusing on that thing. Does that mean I had all those ducks in a row? They had all those things ready, and each one of those components was at 100? No, but I did know that I said I understand. I look back now; those are top things that you need to be able to do. You need to be able to do those things, and additionally, be physically capable of doing things too.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that one as well. And not to say that the qualities that make a great man are that different than what make a great woman or anything like that. Not to be chauvinistic or anything like that. This world needs great women. This world needs great leaders. The commonality that you and I share is that we're husbands, dads, and men. So to touch on that, and then to also understand that you being physically capable of handling challenges, being mentally capable of handling challenges in life through adversity, through perseverance, through building of character, spiritual capabilities as well go into, I think, both a healthy life, a fulfilling life, and a life that leaves a legacy worth living.
Yeah, that's
passed on to others. And the emotional side of things is that, and you touch on military and you touch on law enforcement, and at some point you get into law enforcement, and I'm sure we'll touch on as we move on, the emotional side and the mental side of the challenges of keeping and remaining finding whatever homeostasis or type of anchors you can in life to know you're going to get through this, and that seasons come and seasons go.
Yeah.
So good stuff, good principles. Law enforcement, you're like the Rocky Balboa of the hiring process, and getting knocked down, you get back up.
Oh.
So take me through, at some point somebody says, all right, you get a chance.
Yeah. I would say I tested for my current department 8-10 times. I tested for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other departments multiple times as well. So you're looking at least 15 testing processes, and going through there and not sure if you made it, and finding out you didn't for a bunch of them. Finally, I get one. I got through one testing process, and I'm like, all right, here we go. And I get into it. And as I'm going through it, I was just real excited. And I get through the whole process and the whole thing. All right, thanks, guys. We'll let you know. That's it. And so I was just like, okay, I'll wait. And I just went along and did my job, working at the mill. At this point, I'd been divorced, and it was probably best because there was a support system that wasn't there for the life of a police officer with my ex-wife. It's not that she didn't like cops. I don't think she wanted me to be one for whatever reason.
Sounds like none of the police departments did either.
It's true. I think they were all in cahoots, to be honest with you. And but it worked, because when I got divorced is when this happened. I tested and tested and tested all these different places, and she even told me, I don't want to be married to a cop. And I'm like, ouch, that hurts, because that's what I wanted to be. Well, you fast forward into this thing where we actually got divorced for other reasons, and I said, okay, well, these guys are having a hiring process. I'm going to go get into it. So I get into it, do the hiring process, go through all this different stuff. Okay, guys, we'll let you know. And I left it at that. Well, one day, I'd say maybe, it was 6 months down the road or something like that. I get a phone call from HR for the city, and they're like, hey, yeah, we want to invite you to give you a tentative job offer, have you go do the physical. I'm like, what? I'm at my mom's doing laundry, because I'm a single guy. My kids are at my ex-wife's for their time. And I go up to my mom's house, and because I didn't have a washer and dryer, and I'm doing laundry. And they say, yeah, we want to offer you this job. And I'm like, I'm excited. I was like, I don't know who to call. I didn't know who to tell. So I call my mom. She's at work. And I'm like, hey, I'm at your house. She goes, oh, yeah, I know. She goes, no, this is what just happened. And so I was like, I didn't know who else to call, and because when you're single and you're alone, Mom, meatloaf. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It was cool. So I went and did it and got the job, and I was ecstatic. I'm excited for myself. I'm able to I'm smarter than I thought, and I'm capable of doing cool things. No, because I didn't think very highly of myself. Right. And so I get this job, and it lasted only so long.
Let's talk about that.
So I got the job, and I go to the police academy, and I come back, and I'm on field training, and I did horribly. I got in my own head. I got in my own way. There was that lingering self-esteem thing that I talked about, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't think that I had to do more to learn how to do those things. And I would get into something and I'd forget something that I learned before. And I was just struggling. And I did not pass field training. And I got called into the office and said, hey, this isn't working out. And they put a lot of time, money, and effort into me. And I did not do well. And they said, you're not leaving because we don't like you. You're not leaving because you are a horrible person. You're leaving because you need some more either development, or I needed something more that I didn't have, or I wasn't putting out there. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I can go back and I can go into details. It's not really important right now. Nevertheless, it was that thing that I left, and it hurts, the Band-Aid that gets torn off, it hurts. But I didn't sit there and just wallow in poor me. Mm-hmm. I did maybe for a day or whatever. But my wife now, who we were just dating at the time, it was actually on her birthday that this happened. And so she was like, and so I wanted to take her out to dinner that night, and I wanted to do all this different stuff. And we still went out to dinner. We still did what we needed to do. But I wasn't like, she goes, it wasn't the best birthday ever.
You were crushed.
Right. Because that was my dream.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what I wanted to do. And it had been taken away from me, or I had let it slip out of my fingers, one of the two. And I remember one guy, I can say his name now. He's retired, and he's mentioned it before, but it was Todd Moran. And he said to me, he goes, there's nothing saying that you can't go to another department. You can get maybe a slower paced department, and you can get some experience under your belt. And nothing says you can't come back here. He was just a corporal at the time that he tells me this, but he was just trying to give me some words of encouragement. And I said, you're right. And I left, and 6 months later, I got on with another department and worked there for 3 years. And one of the things the guys there said to me, even the chief at the time, said, somebody brought something up, somebody had beef or whatever, and he goes, you're not going to talk about one of our best officers we have, who always goes above and beyond with his job, and say that he did a bad job. He actually came to my defense. And this chief wasn't known for doing that at all. But he called me one of our best officers. And I'm like, what? All because of the things that I knew that my previous department said, you have to work on these things, and this is the way we do it. It goes overboard. They kind of go overboard on some things, but it's needed. So there's nobody that can come back against you later on and say, hey, you missed this thing. So I said, yeah, you just try to mark, cross every T and dot every I. And so in doing that, he said I was one of their best officers. I'm like, great. So when to make, and this was a smaller department, so I didn't make as much money. So I wanted to go back to the original department. 1, to see if I could do it. 2, because money was better. And so I go back over there, and I apply again. And I talked to a couple of the administrators, and they're like, yeah, we're an equal opportunity employer. You can apply all you want. That was the political answer.
Super encouraging from
the chief at the time. But the administrative sergeant, he was like, no, yes, apply. And then he talked me into, here's what the things you need to be looking for. We want to make sure that you are solid on everything else like that. And he encouraged me a lot. And sure enough, I go and apply, and I got put on a list to, this list that they're going to pull from to hire. And I found out that I was number 12 on the list of 12. And I'm like, oh, wow. So don't think anything of it. I said, okay, well, cool. They'll let me know if this happens, and the list will expire in 1 year. So that means possibly I'll have to take the test again. So I just go back and I'm doing my job. And I was just on patrol one day, and I'd say maybe 8-10 months later, I get this phone call. Hey, your name came up on the hiring list, and we have an opening. We want to see if you want to come in and do, your background, and you want to do your physical and all this different stuff. And I thought, wow, we've gone through 12 people already, and turns out that the first 9 people they went through and they all washed out, the people they had on their list. The next 2 after that, before me, they got hired. One of them ultimately quit after 2 weeks after being out of the academy and said, this is not for me. And the other one ultimately quit and got let go. He's one of those guys that gets let go. They didn't tell him. And they told him, hey, get in there, write your report, do what you got to do. And they didn't tell him, and he's still trying to log in. And HR and IT knew he was let go before he was let go. So, and before anybody else knew he was let go. And so that was the other guy. And so then comes me. And so I get in there, and I come back to my original department, and I'm going through the different things. I had FTOs who were, you guys knew of Donnie Hamilton. He was several episodes ago. He was on here, and he was one of my FTOs. Todd Moran, who I mentioned a bit ago, he was one of my FTOs as well. Anyways, they're doing this, and Donnie would sit in the car, and I'd say, hey, you going to come with me, going in and talk to this person about, a theft or whatever? And he said, no, you know what you're doing. You always ask the right questions. I don't need to go in there. If you don't have it, I'll send you back in to go get it. I said, okay. I would come back, and he goes, what do we got? And I would tell him, he goes, do you have any leads? Yeah, I'm going to go pick up this guy for it. Okay. So we would go do the job, and he would never have to leave the car unless he wanted to. And he did, but it wasn't absolutely necessary for him to watch over me. Same thing with another one. She said, she goes, it feels like I'm doing a ride along all the time. So it was positive, and that built me up, and that encouraged me, and that developed a lot of confidence in what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I get out on the road. I get solo status, and I'm going out there, and I'm doing the job, and I'm copper extraordinaire.
Yeah, and coming in as a lateral has its advantages. You've been able to drive down the highway for a long time before you have to put it in 5th gear.
Right.
And so when you get to your current department, it's one of the busiest departments that you'll see in certainly our state. Mm-hmm. And so you have to have 5th gear, in my opinion. But I remember being in detectives back then when your first stint and then the second time.
Yeah.
And I remember everybody pulling for you. I mean, we're kind of oblivious to what's going on in HR because we're so neck deep in cases back there, back in the day. But everybody's pulling for you like Seabiscuit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And physically a match as well.
Rudy.
Yeah. Let's go, Rudiger. And you didn't disappoint. But the things that you can build around our character, and you can't expect anybody to jump in and have 5th gear to come in off the streets, and this special person that can, and to rally to persevere through the route that you took. If I can't do it here, I'm gonna rebuild. Mm-hmm. And not quit, not give up, not walk away, not have self-pity, not dive into the darkness. But like you said before, you're going to be an adder and a multiplier. You're going to take and apply perseverance to get through that season. And you did that. And I think because of that, everybody pulls for you and pulled for you all the more. And it sets an example to your children. It sets an example to other cops along the way that you have mentored and taught as well. It's like, listen, when you think it's bad, Just hang on, dig deep.
Right.
You can do it. Don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
And you embodied the epitome of don't give up. With the character traits and principles such as honesty, the selfless bravery, the hard work ethic, you can build departments around those traits.
Yeah.
You can't expect everybody to know every single policy, but you know where to find it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have everybody be completely analytical and know every law, but know where to find it in a heuristic sense of apply knowledge, apply common sense. And that's a lost art, is just common sense, street smarts, knowing where to find the information you need, and then apply it within the understandings of the spirit of the law, as well as more or less the golden rule.
Yeah, the morals, the ethics of life. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think some of the best cops, and you're one of them, that I know when you handle your cases, you apply a sense of service that is similar to what you would want your family to be given if you had another officer come and deal with your family. You apply that level of service. You treat people as you would want your family treated. And that's the type of employee, the type of person that you want to build a foundation on.
Right. That's a part of the manhood that you might have, alluded to earlier, you talk about. And that's one of those things. There's a couple of lessons that learned that stick with me in regards to those things that you just talked about. One was I was doing SWAT testing to get on the SWAT team, and you go through it was one of my FTOs in my original stint, and you know this man, but he said to me, what if that's your daughter that is there? Because he knew I had a daughter. He didn't know I had a son at the time, but he said, as we're doing something, we're dealing with these people that called us for whatever reason. He goes, and I hadn't gotten the information that I needed to in the proper questioning and dealing with this investigation or whatever. And he goes, what if that's your daughter? You need to think about those people. It's somebody's daughter. What if it's yours? And it just hit me because I'm thinking about my daughter, and I'm like, yeah. And so that's one of the things that I go off of now is, what if that's mine? And then you also need to take a bigger picture and step back and look at the family members of these people, because you're not always dealing with just the one person. You're dealing with the family members. Look in that grandma's face. Look on that mom's face. Mm-hmm. They're missing that little person that now is in trouble, because that person's been pushed away, and this person that does things they shouldn't be doing is now taking over.
Yeah, and as you move on to becoming a veteran officer, I'm sure you experience this, where there's a balance between that empathy and compassion and then compartmentalization and survival for the marathon that the profession is. Because if you internalize and look at every case as if you apply that 1,000%, you'll run yourself in the red for too long, right? Mm-hmm. So compartmentalization with a balance of understanding. And I think at some point also you end up talking to so many people in crisis, talking to so many people on the worst day of their life, that not only do you become used to the sense of there's a lot of negative things that happen in this world.
Yeah.
You also learn how to talk to people in crisis, and you almost, in a sense, become similar to a counselor or working, solving problems for people in a lay sense.
Yeah. Not
clinical, certainly, but on the level of being able to work out some issues. You can solve problems in 15 minutes that parents took 10 years to create the problem.
Right.
But you talk people out of suicide. You talk people out of running away. You talk people through grief and do death notification. There's things that hit you over and over and over again. So as you have become a police officer and you're new in your career, you've gotten out on your own, how are these principles in life that you're enduring, these trials and tribulations, if you will, how do you get through that? What early on, and then now reflecting on that, what has been the difference, and how did you get through those?
Well, I'll tell you, if I didn't have that godly relationship that I didn't always adhere to solid, because I wasn't always the the best Christian out there. But if I didn't have that foundation, I don't know if I would have been able to do so well or do any of that. And you say, you said, you're one of the best or whatever. And unless that's just that self-esteem thing or whatever, it's humbling for me to hear you say that. But dealing with those things, and I know that there's times that I did talk people out of suicide, or there's at times I talk people out of crisis, or you're dealing with people who are problem people, and they claim to be Christian, or they claim to believe in God, and they claim to follow Jesus, and they claim to know the Bible, and all this different stuff, but it's obviously something else that's going on that's controlling them. Knowing that they have that knowledge and they have that ability they have I don't know if it's a weakness or an opening for that, you're able to then shine some light on things that the Lord said. I remember one guy, he talked about, I go to church all the time, and he all the same time, but he's also talking about, sometimes I just can't control myself. I just got to fight, and I got to hit people, and I don't care what it is, I care where they are. And I'm like, just 2 minutes ago, you were talking about how you follow the Lord, and you know your Bible back left and right, but now you're talking about being this guy who hurts people and wants to see, and now you're getting in trouble. You've got warrants, and you're getting in trouble for hitting on your girlfriend or your wife or whatever. And so you're able to shine some light on it. And I remember this guy specifically doing this, and I said, what are the fruits of the Spirit? Do you know what those are? And normally it's not overly appropriate, or I guess the way to go to talk about biblical stuff to people just on the road, because we're not supposed to proselytize and stuff on that when you're out there doing the job. However, I looked at it like, this guy opened the door, and he's bringing this, and he's establishing this conversation. And so what I wanted to do was, I said, okay, I'm going to meet him where he's at, which is all we can do. But in this case, I said, what are the fruits of the Spirit? And he goes, I don't know. I don't really know that. I said, so let's go over the fruits of the Spirit real quick. So I, love, patience, peace, kindness, all that stuff. And then finally, the last one is self-control. I said, if you are saying that you're this Christian, why don't you show the fruits of that? And your number one fruit that you need, it sounds like, is self-control. And this guy who was just acting all tough and strutting and all this different stuff, he just stops, right? And kind of falls back into himself. Body kind of just like shoulders just drop, and his eyes get really big, and he's like staring at the ground. And you could see that he's having this introspection. Like, holy cow, why has anybody ever told me this? And there's just things like that. You get to have conversations with people. I remember, you guys know Brooke Johnson that has been on this podcast, and he talks about he'll pray with guys on their way to jail and things like that. That's the kind of thing that is important. That's the kind of thing that makes the difference. Having that moral compass, knowing where to go and how to do what you're doing based off of the foundation you've already built. If you haven't built a foundation, it's going to be hard to do that stuff, because you're going to let it permeate inside of you, and you're going to let that fester, because there's a lot of evil and rotten stuff out there that we have to deal with. And if we don't protect ourselves from it, it's going to start seeping into us. So that's why we need the chinks in our armor to be built up and stronger, and not have those weaknesses, because those moral compass things will not be so strong later on. We'll be too weak, because we've let this negative, this rust, this filth, this evil that we operate in start to make its way into our lives. And if you don't have that foundation first, that's where the problem comes in.
So tangibly take me through that. As far as when you endure a traumatic call, what is your process? What does that look like, both on the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual levels, on all four of those legs of the table?
Yeah, I remember one specific one. There was this little girl, and she was upstairs playing, and her parents had taken her to this house, and because the parents needed to buy drugs. Little girl's upstairs playing, and she's got her dollies, doing the whole thing. Well, one of the guys that her parents are dealing with downstairs had this rifle that had an automatic addition to it, and he uses it like a crutch to stand up from the couch that he's sitting on. And as he does it, he bounces the buttstock onto the floor, which then sends up a burst of automatic fire up through the ceiling from the downstairs into the upstairs, and it strikes the little girl while she's playing with her dolls. It also struck, there was another lady up there that was kind of watching her, kind of napping while the little girl played. Little girl was 4, maybe 5 years old, something. I happened to be at the hospital. I had taken somebody on a mental hold, and I was getting ready to leave. And when I hear this come out over the radio, supervisor at the time says, "Stay at the hospital. We've got incoming. I want you there." I said, okay. Since I was there, I was just going to intercept them as they got there. I get there. I'm waiting. Ambulance shows up. They get the little girl into the room. They're working on her. And the nurse that I was just kind of joking around with previously on my mental hold that I'd taken, we weren't making jokes about the mental hold person, but we were, you talk with people afterwards and you make a couple little jokes or whatever. And the vibe in the ER at the time was just, it was light, and things were just jokey. I get, the ambulance comes in. I go into the, as they're in there, they bring the little girl into the room, and we're trying to, there's just a bustle of people. There's nurses and techs and doctors, and everybody's coming in and going out and bringing stuff and getting more things and going back and forth. And they've got the heart monitor, the beep, beep, all that stuff like that. And I remember the doctor I'm kind of standing by the door and watching this, and the doctor goes, "Where is this pulse coming from?" And he's like, "Oh my God," he's just working. "Why do I have a pulse? Where's this coming from?" And they can't get any life out of the little girl. They can't get anything. However, the monitor is still reading activity. And he's like, and they're working. He's frenzing, and he's wiping his brow, and he is beside himself with just stress and frustration that everything he's doing, he's not getting a physical response to, except for the heart monitors going. And and everybody's still just moving around. And I'm watching this whole thing until I just see him stop and lean on the table and say, "That's it. We got to call it." And finally the heart monitor just stops and goes beep. Just has that long beep. And they shut it off, and they call it, whatever time it was. And everybody starts, they just drop their tools or whatever, and they all just start shuffling out of the room. And the doctor's still kind of leaning over. He's the last one to leave, and he leaves. And now I'm left there in the doorway, and there's this little 4 or 5-year-old girl laying on the table. And she's got all the tubes in her and all the different things. And I look over at the nurse that I was just kind of joking with about 45 minutes before. And she was kind of joyous earlier because she was like her 3rd day working in there. She goes, "Man, I really like this. And it's really fun." She goes, "I've never seen this before in my life." And I said, I understand that. I never saw her after that. I don't think she kept working there or she got moved somewhere else. I don't know. Nevertheless, she goes, she leaves. I have one of our detectives shows up. She comes in and she says, "We need to document this whole thing, take photos, how it goes. I'm going to need help moving the body around so we can get photos of the exit wounds and the entry wounds and all the different stuff." And so the other nurses they come in to kind of like, "Well, can we help with anything?" And we don't know. I'm doing the manipulating of the body. And while the detective is taking the photos that she needs to get from the angles she needs to get. and I had to just go somewhere else. And I'm looking at the detective as she's taking the photos, and she's just crying as she's taking these photos. And it's so emotional to her. For whatever reason, I was able to compartmentalize this, and I'm just doing a job at this point. I might as well be, rolling over a log, because I'm just doing a job. That's just...
You're an autopilot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I go out, and we get done. Detective goes out. She has to make some phone calls. I call. She says, "Hey, can you call dispatch to get a funeral home coming?" Yep. So I call dispatch, and I, not even thinking, "Hey, okay, we're gonna need the funeral home here, blah, 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 blah." And the dispatcher on the other end, she stops and she goes, I hear this pause.
She was a call taker.
And she didn't know that the kiddo had passed. Mm-hmm. And she died. I said, yeah. So, blah, blah, blah. And then I stopped for a second. I said, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you didn't know. I didn't realize that. And she was just, you can hear her voice cracking on the other line of the phone. And I talked to her later, and I apologize. I didn't realize. And, the rest of the investigation goes the way that it goes. You had to talk to the parents, and you had to do all this different stuff. Well, I realized that several things, that you don't know what people are going through. You don't know what people know. You cannot, you have to be aware of what you're doing, the physical side that you're talking about, that physical side of where are people at with what they're doing. I know you're physically capable of just moving and doing this, but what is pushing that physical side forward? And so you have to be aware. Your mind has to be open to the idea that people don't know what you know, and you don't know what their attachment to this situation is. So you can't just go in there and be like, all right, so here's what's happening. There's blood and guts everywhere, and I need you to do and get a sponge, and you need to start. You can't do that. You can't just be unaware. So the physical side of doing your job is good to a point where your mind is, unless it's to the point where your mind is not aware of what's going on. Once you get into that point where you do that thing, now you have to think about not only their feelings. You have to, if you're doing an introspection, you have to start thinking about what it is you're feeling. That whole night did what it did, and everybody got affected by it. The people that were there on scene that dealt with that, the people that were me and the detective that were at the hospital. Later on, the detectives that had to re-examine this case for court because this guy got charged. All these different things. But that morning, I get done, because it was graveyard that I was working. I get done with my shift, and I come home, and I walked right upstairs. My kids were teenagers at this time, and I walked upstairs. They're getting ready for school. And I just walked in there, and my daughter's sitting there doing her hair, and I go and I give her a hug. She goes, "Hi, Dad." Give me that weird side eye look. Like, what's that for? I just love you guys. And my son comes out. He walks out of the shower, and because the bathroom and the shower are two different places, and he walks out of the shower, and his hair's all wet still, but he's all dressed, and he's taller than me, much. And so he comes out. He's like, "Hey, Dad, what's going on?" And I just stopped him, got in front of him, and he's walking back to his room, and I gave him a hug, like right in the hallway. And he's like, "Thanks. What's that for?" "I just love you, man." "Well, I love you too." And he's giving me, once again, that side eye thing. And I get done, and I said, "Hey, I just want you guys to know that I love you, and you're very important to me." And they're like, "Thanks. We love you too." They have no idea. I go home. I go back downstairs. My bedroom's downstairs from the upstairs, and I go to get ready to get in bed. And I climb in bed. My wife is still there. She doesn't have to. We usually kind of. I got in bed before she got up, and so she goes, "Hey." She usually would ask, "How was work? How was everything?" I said, "It's a terrible night, horrible." And she goes, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah." And I would fill my wife in on some of the things, especially the things that were going to affect me specifically. And she goes, "I'm so sorry." She does the whole, affectionate thing to make. She goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine." And I gave the kids a hug and stuff like that. I just needed to be by my kids because even though that kid was 4, my kids are now teenagers and they stink and they're, whatever teenagers do. They're still my kids. And I still wanted to, that was my outlet, my emotional outlet is for my kids. And as I'm telling my wife this, I started just bawling and lay in bed. And she gives me this hug and, make sure I'm okay. She has to get up, start getting ready for work herself. She gets up and she would take my kids to school. And then, so she's taking them to school and my kids, she tells me this later. They're like, "What was wrong with Dad? It was weird. He came upstairs and gave us a hug and said he loves us. What's going on?" And thinking something. And she goes, "He had a really bad call at work." And they're like, "Oh." So when they came home that night, they were a little more receptive to any emotions that I was going through or whatever. And so it was just that emotional thing, that understanding that this stuff happens to other people. Hold close to those things that you have like that. Hold close that the love and the relationships you have, because you never know when you can lose that. And it's just the appreciation of your life that helped with my emotional side, because we obviously did a debrief later, and which was good, but I was fixed by the time we got to that debrief. That detective and I, we hugged each other afterwards and stuff like that. But overall, the thing that fixed me, that helped me deal with that trauma, was my children. If I had kid calls, it was always my kids. If I need to go see them, if it was something husband and wife issue, I needed to see my wife. It was like whatever issue that I had at work, I had to go find what I had with that and then go water that plant per se. And so that's where the emotional side of it, and the spiritual side is just, opening up to the mentors that I would have about if I have situations, or if I have things, and I would get, whether it's Bible verses, or I'd pray about it, or they'd pray with me about it. And that worked for me as well. So, stuff like that works for those 4 table legs: the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. Things like that. It's a lot different than the movies show, where they say, they show these guys that get in these shootouts and whatever, and then they just go right back to they're having dinner that night and it's birthday parties and stuff. It doesn't work like that. There's more to it. You have to fix yourself, but you have to know where your foundation is, and where do you get your strength from?
Well said. And an acute incident such as this one has its effects and has its course that it takes moving forward to process through. But in the same sense, on the other hand, you have these cumulative, over your 17 years in the profession, cumulative calls that have added up, certainly, and they're there.
Yeah.
Some have likened it to the metaphor of, it's dialed up to a 9, and there's certain things that you can do to dial it down, but it never really gets down to a 0 where it's just gone, right? Mm-hmm. It's just part of the things you've experienced, and it's part of the scars that make up what's in your brain.
Right.
And your brain and your prefrontal cortex, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but this is just what I've learned along the way, is that, you process and you execute things with your prefrontal cortex, but the memories and the sensations, the things you hear, smell, things like that go into your memory on a sensory level, or in your limbic or amygdala system of your brain, and they stay there. And that's what holds on to cumulative trauma. So cumulatively, are there things that you can say? There's things that trigger, us as cops, and on a personal level, there's things that dial you up to a 9, and things that help to bring it down to a 4. For some people, there's a process that they go through where they go deadlift, they go run, they talk to a psychologist, they do EMDR or cognitive behavioral therapy. There's things that help police officers realistically to just smash down the stigma of actually going and getting help. Are there things in your process cumulatively that help dial down those days where you hit a 8 or a 9 down to a 2, 3, somewhere in there?
Yeah. They're, and it depends on, when I was graveyard, I did that a lot. I made sure that I worked out every day. I would go work out, knowing whether or not I had a major issue or an incident that occurred, but I would make sure that I worked out every day. And that would take care of those things, even the oncoming ones that hadn't happened yet. But then if the things did happen, I would be able to then go work out pretty hard. Additionally, I would play the drums. You can see them right over here. Mm-hmm. But
that is an impressive drum set, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. But I would do that, and I would play some of the fastest, hardest metal you can think of. And I would find the non-drum versions on YouTube or whatever app that I could get, and I would just double bass, just fast, hard stuff all the time, and I'm just dripping sweat, and that helped. Honestly, you get this out. I also been doing karate for years and years. I've been doing martial arts since I was a teenager. And that was one of the things that I would go do that, and you go get in a fight, and that would help with a lot of things and not to hurt somebody, but maybe you just got to get punched in the face to just remember that, oh yeah.
And just to be clear, we're talking about in the dojo training.
Right. Yeah. Not going out in a alley behind 7-Eleven or anything like that. I mean,
but mutually agreed upon participants that are training in the art.
Consensual sparring that you get in there, and it made a big difference that it knocked down my ego, one, because I wouldn't always win. I played the drums, it would get me physically, but then it would knock down my ego, realizing, man, I'm nowhere near as good as the guy that actually plays this. Or I'd go work out, and then I'd maybe get injured, or I'd go work out and I'd feel fantastic that I made a PR and that I hadn't done before. And so there's all these things that kind of build into that, where you're making a difference. You're seeing an effect on yourself physically. And that would help me mentally be able to deal with things, and then be present for my family. And then it would help me spiritually, because when we'd go to church and stuff like that, I was comfortable in who I was. I would get those buildups, that red zone that you talked about a little bit ago. It would knock it back down, because I wouldn't stay in there. Even if I'm struggling for something from work, that physical would start bringing that needle down. Mm-hmm. So I'm not struggling in that position anymore. I had more bandwidth now to deal with those things, which makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I think as you move on in this career, you can probably appreciate the physiological effects of a physical workout with regard to mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the physical is the thing that we all use. That's the number one thing that we always think about when we do something. Like, the alarm goes off. What do you have to do? You have to get up. That's why your alarm went off, to wake you up, to get you up. We don't always get up. Sometimes we hit that snooze and we stay in bed a little longer, but your physical body, you have to get up. And the older you get, the more you realize, oh my gosh, I hurt myself in my sleep, or whatever. Your back hurts, or your knee hurts, or your legs hurt, or whatever the case is. And you stand up and you feel like the Tin Woodsman walking to the bathroom or something in the morning. Mm-hmm. It's just the physical, because that's the first thing that starts talking to us. But if we really listen and you shut things down for a second, your mind is telling your body, you got to get up. Your mind is bringing that from your why. And what is your why? We all have a different why. I'm going to get in trouble with my boss if I don't do it. I got to get a paycheck. I've got to make sure I get the kids up. Like blah, 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 blah. But what about your why, where this is why I'm doing what I'm doing? And so if it's not just passion, it's more than that. Your why is something more important. If you can explain your why, once you develop it and you know what your why is, and you're able to tell that to somebody when they ask, in short, succinct, you don't have to keep saying, okay, well, and this, but you can say this reason right here, this short 3-topic reason. then you're good to go. If that keeps changing every time somebody asks you, then it's not a good why, and it's superficial. So your physical body is going to move when your mind tells it what to do. Your mind's going to pull from your why. There's going to be emotion there because it could be Monday morning and you don't want to go back to work. You want to go back to the weekend, right? Or whatever the case is. But your why is then going to be derived from your spirituality. And your spirituality is going to be a foundation for why you do what you do, why you build up your mental bandwidth, and then why that pushes your body. So I think it's very important that you build up that physical side of it so it's capable, because your mind is going to try to push it, and your why is going to try to push it, and your emotions are going to try to push it, and your spirituality is going to try to push it, and your body's going to be like, sometimes, yeah, guys, follow me, and sometimes I need you guys to push me. And so physically being capable is very important, not just for police work, but for anything in the world. Not looking past the heroes that we talk about and talk to on this podcast, it's the human in general. Let's build all those things up, and so then you can become the best version of yourself.
Mm-hmm. And that's whether you want to call it the lifelong learner, the person that's growth centric, or the introspective being, the person that seeks to become more, or take something away from failure and to grow it's a noble quality. Mm-hmm. There are things that we see, whether we've done it or we've seen it, there are things not to do.
Yeah.
Following trauma, both acute and on the cumulative level. And we've seen everything from alcohol, you've seen infidelity, you've seen just like a general lack of getting up when you're knocked down.
Right.
You see the guys that sit in the dark alone and say they're fine,
mm-hmm.
and don't reach out for help. Maybe they're just not strong enough. Maybe they don't understand that they're not a burden to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
There are things not to do, and we've seen it and experienced it. What are some things that you would share with others as far as these are the things you cannot do? Do not get in the habit of doing after you go through, or either your acute incident or something cumulatively on the daily.
Right. So I think what you're kind of alluding to, and trying to see what my view of the after effect of is. But I'll tell you about, I got into a shooting several years ago, and that shooting was pretty, it's not an everyday occurrence. I mean, you might see it on YouTube, or you might see it on, social media. But cops don't get in shootings every day. And there's millions of cops out there, and there's very few shootings that occur. However, I guess comparatively, but I got into one, and it was really surreal that it happened. We went and rendered aid as soon as we got done, right, as soon as we put our weapons away, and the threat was stopped. And we went and rendered aid. My belief is that the guy dies. We render aid. They found a pulse. They get him on the gurney. They get him to the hospital. They bring him back. It was touch and go. They didn't think he was going to make it past a week. He is alive and well today, from my understanding. Nevertheless, excuse me, albeit he's in prison for attempted murder on me, but this happens, and as soon as we get done, we walk out. We're kind of outside the area, and I'm getting, hey, everybody needs to separate, and we need to keep everybody separated. Okay.
And why is that? Can you break that down?
It's that inference of ideas. You don't want somebody saying, oh, I totally saw this. And then if I'm thinking something else, and I said, well, I saw this.
So it's why police preserve the integrity of the police officer's statements.
Correct.
They have an independent recollections.
Correct. Because if they're saying, well, I saw this, and all of a sudden now I'm thinking, well, he said that, maybe I'm missing something in what I think I saw. I didn't really see because he saw, but it could be the other way, and who knows? So that individual recollection is very important for your integrity, that you saw what you saw and you know what you saw, and you just go off of that, and you don't want to have some other ideas put into there that, yeah, that when you walked around the corner, this is what you saw. It is? Because I thought I saw this. Maybe I'm missing something, because you already know that things just went by so fast. Your mind has already gone through this big old huge rush of things, and you're trying to recall everything. And if somebody says the house was blue and it was actually green, okay, maybe it was a blue house. And then you go by it and it was a yellow house, and everything totally. So you can only go off of what you absolutely know. And there's things you might forget. There's time that you might lose. There's blinders that you put on the side of your eyes that you physically don't do, but your mind does things to try to protect yourself. There's pain that you don't feel because you're going through these things, because your mind is saying, nope, I'm not going to worry about that. We're worrying about the thing that might really hurt us fully. And so it's all that stuff. And I've talked about it before. It's that Rolodex. Why do you have a Rolodex in your head? Why do you think that your life flashed before your eyes before this major incident? Because your mind is trying to find something similar so it knows how to react to it. So we get into this issue and we get separated afterwards, and I'm standing over by a fire truck, and I'm completely by myself. I see everybody bustling around, and nobody's coming over and talking to me. Nobody's coming over. And one person, once again, Todd Moran, comes over and says, "You doing okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. Can I at least call my wife or text her, let her know that I'm okay?" And he goes, "Yeah, don't give any details, but just, let her know." And so she doesn't have to worry, because who knows with social media and the news and stuff, we don't want families getting that stuff before they know the full story, because it's a wild guess. And so, other than that, I said, this is what happened. I just want to let you know. I will call you with more information later. She goes, "Okay, as long as you're fine." And she grew up in the military, or her parents were in the military. So she grew up on military bases and knew that you get the information that you get and you can't ask for more. And she knew how that worked. And she just says, "Okay, let me know when you get more." So she's cool that way. And they take us back to the office, and we do the whole interview with our lawyers and everything else, because just because you're a police officer doesn't mean that you're still susceptible to the laws that are out there. You can't just walk around shooting people. As much as the media likes to say, "Oh, these cops, they just do whatever." If you shoot somebody, it's homicide, and you kill them, it's homicide. It doesn't matter. You've committed a crime until, or at least the semblance of a crime. Yes, we're innocent until proven guilty. I'm not sentenced to anything, but you're the subject and the suspect of a possible crime at this point. And so,
yeah, and to be clear, homicide refers to death caused by another person. That's what the breakdown of that word means. It doesn't mean it meets criminal elements.
Right.
Murder is murder. Right. Manslaughter is recklessly causing death of another. Homicide just refers to a person caused the death of another. And there's lawful and legally defensible and ethical reasons why sometimes that happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so it comes down into, was I at that point that did I commit a crime? And so that's why they talk to a lawyer, because it's the possibility you committed a crime until we look at all the facts. And obviously the whole thing comes out that there's no, we're acquitted. There's no crime here. It was a justified shooting of somebody that was attempting to murder us. And, it's been completely adjudicated by this point. And, we're good. So the follow-up though to that whole thing is the immediate day after. I sat and I never play video games, rarely ever play. And I played video games all day that next day. And my wife this was during COVID, it's 2020. And she was at home. She was working from home at the time. So she was able to kind of keep an eye on me, but she was doing her work. So I'm sitting in the other room just playing video games. And I didn't play the drums. I didn't work out. I didn't do any of those things that I would normally do. I played video games from dark to dark. I went and got something to eat maybe. And she would even ask, "You want something to eat?" "No, I'm good." Until finally at some point I was like, "Yeah, maybe I do want something to eat," And I just vegged that whole day. I didn't do much of anything at all. The next day, I had a little bit more energy to me, but that night, I woke up and I was awake for 2 or 3 hours. Not that that was on my mind, but I just couldn't sleep. One, I think because I hadn't physically done anything the day before, sat in a chair the whole day, but I think there's other things that are working in my brain that I didn't realize they didn't take forefront. And so I struggled with that growth of you got to get up and you got to do something. So during the next day after that, I did a little bit more. I played video games, but not as much. My dad was on a big old long cross-country trip with his fifth wheel, and he's just going across the country. I think he was going to Louisiana or whatever in his fifth wheel, just checking out the U.S., right? And I said, hey, I sent him a text and I said, call me when you can, because he wasn't always in cell service. I said, I have something I need to tell you. And that's not something I'll ever text my dad. And so when he got that, he goes, what's going on? So I tell him and he goes, thanks for calling. Let me know. Just let me know how it goes. And I had to go tell my mom the night of the shooting. We went over to my mom's because I wanted to get ahead of it before the news, because my mom, she's very worrisome sometimes. And so I wanted to make sure she knew about it and that she didn't have to, whatever she heard on the news, believe half of it maybe, and so, but then that growth, so this happened on like a Wednesday, and, the Thursday did nothing. Friday was a little bit more. And then by the weekend, I was feeling pretty good about myself. Well, not feeling good about myself, but feeling a little better than I was the couple days before, and, mowed the lawn, did the things I needed to do. But I still didn't have this go get 'em or anything like that. Till about Monday, I decided I could play the drums. I decided maybe I'd go get a workout in, things like that. And that made a difference. Once you're feeling this sludge that's over you, mm-hmm. When you get out there and you start doing things, we talked about it before, you start moving through it. It kind of breaks up that. It's like mud that gets dried on you. You have to move it in order to move your arm or whatever in order to break that stuff off. Well, that's what that seemed like to me. Mm. It was just like breaking that off and opening myself up and being able to move myself in that direction. And then the growing through that just the understanding how to navigate this thing. And everything I started actually doing pretty well until I went into the office for something, and I was on my way out, and I talked to one of the other guys that was with me when this shooting occurred. And I said, how you doing? He goes, I'm great. Things are good. And I know he doesn't necessarily have a spiritual connection whatsoever. But he goes, how are you? I said, things are great. Just one thing kind of outstanding for me. And he goes, what's that? I said, I've not prayed since this whole thing happened. And this has gone 3 or 4 weeks at this point. I said, I haven't prayed. I haven't talked to God about it. And I'm honestly ashamed to bring it up to him, because I'm thinking, thou shalt not kill. And we didn't know whether or not what this guy's prognosis was at this time. And it's sitting on me. And I talked to my pastor at the time, and he gave me no words of anything. And that didn't help me. And so, but this one guy that was with me, he says, why haven't you done that? And I said, because it's not a big deal to him, but he knew it was a big deal to me. And I said, I don't know. I feel ashamed to be able to come before him with this. He goes, he already knows, right? Well, yeah. what can you do? You can't go back in time and stop it, change it. I said, yeah. So I'm thinking about this whole thing, and I started the podcast after this whole event, and it's just kind of sitting on me. And one of the things that was ultimately told to me, and this was by what's his name? On Combat.
Grossman.
I had him on the podcast, and he ultimately explained it to me to where I understood it on the verbal level, but I understood this previously. And he says, no, it doesn't necessarily say thou shalt not kill, as in you can't kill anything. It refers to not murdering and not intentionally being evil about your murdering, because the Bible, guys killed all the time, and it was murder or killing happens in wars, and how many times have you stepped on a bug, all these different things, and you've killed bugs, and you eat meat, and we've killed, but it's murder. It's that, like you were saying before, the difference between murder and willfully wanting to destroy another human life. And that's what the intent of the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill, means. But at the time, it was like, I don't know about that, right? And so finally, after talking with this other officer, I go and I say, I said, okay, so I took some time, and I had a prayer time, and it was so relieving. It honestly took this gigantic burden that I had sitting on me away, because I was able to open up about this process, this thing that was holding me back from being able to be free of this. Because I knew I was justified legally. I knew that had I not done what I'd done, I could be dead. And with the guys next to me, had they not done what they did, they could be dead as well, or I could be. So I knew we were that legally justified, and we ultimately got acquitted of anything, and there's no...
Or beyond that, actually deemed justified.
Correct.
Without a trial.
Correct.
Deemed
Yes.
justified by
Absolutely.
a review, an investigation by law enforcement from an outside agency, the district attorney, and it was deemed justified.
Correct.
Yeah.
There was no question that what we did was right, per se. And so the only lingering thing was now my relationship, because my wife was like, yeah, he's good, because I went to counseling, and she went with me to counseling, and all that was fine. Mentally, I was good. Emotionally, I wasn't breaking down. I remember breaking down one time right after the whole thing, because it doesn't matter if somebody's trying to kill you. If you take a life, it communicates with your soul. Mm-hmm. And so everything was there except for the spiritual side. And the spiritual side I was neglecting, and I was trying to push away. Like, it's not going to go away. It just doesn't happen. It's the elephant in the room. You need to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And so I did. And it was such a weight that had I not done that, had I not had that foundation, had I not had that relationship, it would have still been lingering. And the minute I did that, and it was a long time that I just sat in there and listened for the Lord's voice. Had I not done that, I wouldn't be as confident as I am now, that I'm like, I know what I can do, and I know what I've done, and I'm justified, and I know that I can go to the Lord for these problems that I have. And so that's how I went through. And so I finally started realizing that's how you go through these traumatic issues, at least for me, how it works for me. But you got to have that physical side, the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, those breaks, and then the rebuilding of those things and giving time to let those things come back in and fix you. And as I did that, I realized now I can move on. And not only do I move on, I can help others if they get into that situation. And I can be that, and it wasn't the ultimate thing. I know everything now, but it really changed my path, that I look at things. I don't want to waste time. I don't want to waste time sitting in my truck just listening to music. I will listen to a podcast, or I'll listen to a book, or things like that. When I work out, I'm listening to books. People have headphones on, and they have music playing. I'll have books playing in my head when I'm doing workouts. And the only time I really do music is if I'm playing the drums, or maybe like the 10 minutes right after work when I kind of want to just decompress from, on the drive home. Otherwise, I'm always listening to books or podcasts, and I'm trying to better myself and trying to build myself up. And how can I use this information to then share with others and help them grow and be better people too?
So there's not like I'm doing this for me so that I get a medal, I get a crown, I get an achievement ribbon or a participation t-shirt. Right. What's the why beyond the earthly reward of just doing work well done? You mentioned passing it on to others, and you mentioned the value of family and faith. What's your why when it comes down to, why do you even bother getting up and continuing to be introspective, to grow, to see each moment of adversity or valleys where we go through as not something terrible, but as opportunity for growth? Why?
And I think that goes back to that manhood question that we had before. So my kids are grown now, and they don't live at home anymore. I don't have my little kids that I have to get up for sports or school or anything like that. And I don't, and they live in other states too, because it's good for their jobs, and that's what they do. Not to get away from us. They love us. I love my kids, and they reach out to me. I talk to my son every other day, and I talk to my daughter just about every other day, whether it's by text or just a TikTok that we send out, or whatever the case may be, a YouTube video, something. There's always a communication between us, and it's always positive, and it's always good. And so then when we see each other, we can pick up right where we are. And so I love my kids, and we have a great relationship, but they're not home anymore. I wake up and I think, okay, I've got to do something. Because I remember when I first got divorced, it was when my kids would be over it with my ex-wife. I was like, what do I do? What do I do with life? Because I'd always had my kids there. And I realized that life is about other people. We're on this planet for other people. The reason we do the things we need to do is for other people. We're not just doing this for ourselves. We're not meant to be hermits. We're not meant to sit by ourselves and just go and spend all our time by ourselves. We're meant for other people on this planet. And we are meant to cultivate relationships. We're meant to help each other out. So when I think that, I'm not there for my kids anymore, I still get to go to karate, and I get to teach karate. So I'm still spending time with kids, and I'm still spending time with other people and doing that. At work, I wake up and I know that I've got to go to work. I've got to be in good shape, because if there's a fight that needs to happen, I need to be able to be in that fight and be there for the longevity of that thing, because somebody's daughter or somebody's son may need me to be at my best to fight their battle for them. So I physically need to be capable. Not only that, but I might need to fight for myself. I'm not meant to die. And if I do die, I want to know that I used every single thing that I had up until that point, and they were just stronger, bigger, faster, harder, whatever the case may be. But that's my why. I want to know that I can physically be able to do that, to be able to share this information. I have this stuff, and if I have this information, this knowledge, this experience, and all these different things that I have, and I'm just sitting on it, what good am I? What good was that? All that experience. What good was all that knowledge? If you're not giving it away, what am I saving it for? Because if I die tomorrow, will anybody have benefited from my life? And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person that didn't benefit or didn't provide benefit for somebody else because I was so selfish and arrogant that I thought that whatever I had is great for me and I get to take it with me, because I don't get to, if I make money, which, money's good. And people say the money's the root of all evil. No, the love of money is the root of all evil. Money does good things. It's just a thing though, but I can't take it with me. But if I make a lot of money, I can use that then to help other people. I can spend more time with my kids. I can see my grandkids grow. I can provide more things for more people. And that's what I want to do. I don't know how many times we'll sit there and I got this from my uncle that was on the last podcast. He said, he and I we'd gone to dinner one time, and there was these two ladies that walked in and with a third, and the third lady was special needs, but she had this tiara that said happy birthday, and she was just proud of herself that it's her birthday, and they're taking her out for her birthday and everything like that, and it was just really sweet. And he goes, "You see those people over there?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Watch this." And so he calls the waiter over and he says, "Hey, we want to get their bill." And I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And he doesn't, and he goes, "And I don't want them to know about it." And so he goes, the waiter's like, "Okay," brings the bill over, and we leave before they even knew it. And I said, "You didn't even like to see what their look on their faces? That's not important." He goes, I've got this money. I've got money. And I can afford, even if a $50 bill at a burger place, I can afford their dinner. That's not an issue. And I don't need to see their face. I don't need their thank yous. I just want them to know there's good people on the world. And I said, that's awesome. And that's the sort of thing that I love. So if you have this ability, you have things to help people out with, go do it, right? You're not taking it with you. And in 100 years, there's going to be somebody else living in your house. There's going to be somebody else maybe wearing your clothes. There's going to be somebody else maybe spending your money. It's not, you don't get to take it with you, and your kids may not have it. And maybe their grandkids may not even know who you are. They might have seen a picture of you. They might know of your name. But unless you leave a solid legacy, something that will resonate for them later on, you're not taking anything with you. You might as well do right now and be for the people that are around you, the people that you can help, the people that you can lead, people that you can love and show what love is and show who God is, so they can learn who God is and they can go to heaven as well. But you can't, it's not that I'm saving them, but it's that I'm showing Christ through me, which is the hope that I might have.
The willingness to be used. And it sounds like what you're describing is something that I touched on when I was on with you, was agape love.
Yeah.
And, love your neighbor as yourself. And that is a quality that I think mankind is quite short on, especially in this season of the world, is you see things falling apart. You see division, you see polarity, you see, election year dramatics of hate and nonsense, and then the values we hold as Americans tarnished day after day, and certainly with the volume turned up of it in your face every day, day in and day out. It's, to be able to find what is important, to be still, to be present with the ones you love, and to be beyond the things of this world, to be beyond all the trouble and all of the strife and stress and the loud noise, which is mostly what it is, division, to focus on the things that are important, and that is merely and most importantly love. And so we talk about the things that make a man, what makes even a great woman, what makes a great human being is the capacity for love.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you demonstrate that with when you go to work each day, and the flock that you protect is not for you, not for your glory, not for your self-promotion, but that you recognize you're going to love your neighbors as yourself. And your course to your current role, being a school resource officer. Difficult position. Not a lot of people want to do it. Not a lot of people have a real idea of what that's like and how difficult it can be. Not the typical course of career trajectory to get where you're at, but you landed there, and for a reason. And, as Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purposes. And I believe that with you and your role right now, that you are where you're supposed to be, that all things work together for good. And it's for him, ultimately, for his glory, but also you're shining a light every day. And can you speak on your current role? And while it may not be where you saw yourself 5 years ago, it's where you are now. There's challenges, there's good days, and there's bad days. But how do you see where you're at right now in your walk on the daily? And what is your stance on where you're at professionally, and how you're being used, and how you feel about it?
Yeah, there's lots of ups and downs, lots of things happened, and a lot of ins and outs that happen with police work, and good things happen, bad things happen. And ultimately I get asked, hey, do you want to do this job? And at first I said, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm not interested whatsoever. And, even though it's Monday through Friday, it's day shift, it's, banker hours and stuff. That's cool. I was like, I don't want to. I've got other things I want to do, and that's what I want to do. And so, I get into it, and they kept asking me, would you do this? Would you do this? And I said, no. And they were like, I can't think of anybody else that would be really good with like kids and stuff like you would be. Consider it. I said, no, I don't, I'm not interested. I've got a couple more begging that happened, and ultimately I relented, and I said, okay, I'll give it at least a year. We'll give it a shot. And one of the questions was, why don't you want to do it? And I said, well, look, the kids are turds. I'm sure all the teachers are all just, they're going to be just grumpy, and there's going to be problems, and it's going to be all this different stuff. And you hear about all this stuff on the news about the politics and stuff of teachers unions and whatever, and teachers being this way or that way, and kids just, being whatever. And you see this on social media also. So there's this picture that's already painted for me. And I said, no, and that's why. Just give it a shot. I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. I get in there, and I find that the kids are 10 times better than I give them credit for. These kids, and some of them are turds, but it's not that. It's only because they've never been shown how not to be sometimes, or they've always been allowed to just get away with that, and they need a positive role model by somebody. So the kids are way better than I give them credit for. Some of them are just tens. I mean, they're funny, they're goofy, they're playful, they're respectful, they're just good people. And you see that these kids are going to grow up to be, that the world is actually going to be in better hands than the media portrays it. And then to the teachers and the staff and stuff, you think one thing, and it's not that way. Once again, the media gets it wrong. Surprising, but they get it wrong, because these teachers, they are great humans, and they are good people, and they just want to do good for the kids, and they want to be loved, and they're humans as much as anybody else is, and they get frustrated, and they get their patience tested and everything with the kids, because these kids have so much energy. They're kids. It's just, they need to be guided. And these people do that. And so I realized that everything is better than what I thought it was. And so I get into that position, and I'm doing it. And is it always awesome? No. Is it always fun and games? No. But there's some good to everything, and there's some bad to everything. And the days that, I go back to the office and I see somebody saying, man, we just had this, I'm so tired of these fraud cases or whatever. How was your day? What'd you do today? I was playing dodgeball with some sixth graders. And then after that, I went, read some Dr. Seuss, and then, things like that.
And you even had them allowed to shave your head at some point. Tell me about that.
I did. The football team at one of the middle schools, some of the kids were like, "We're going to go undefeated this year." I said, "Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it." And they're like, "No, we are. We'll tell you what." I said, well, let us do something and we'll prove it to you. I said, "All right, I tell you what, you guys go undefeated. You can shave my head." They're like, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah." And I didn't, it was early in the year and I didn't think anything of it. And sure enough, they're like, "Oh, we're undefeated." And every week they would come by. I'd see them in the hallways or whatever. And they would say, "Oh, we're undefeated." And I'm like, so far, so good. I don't know. You got to wait. They had like 7 games or something they were going to play, 6 of them or something. And they got 1 game left. Like, "Oh, we could totally beat these guys." It's like their rival middle school that's in the same town. And I'm like, "We'll see," and sure enough, they come back. We're undefeated. And I found out that they would go into like practices and they're like, we got to shave Frownfelter's head. And it would just turn into this thing. And so, they get undefeated and I go and I tell the principal, I said, "Hey, yeah, I made this bet with these guys and they're going to do it." He's like, "Great. Let's, how about we do it at the assembly?" And so they had an assembly on Halloween Day. They go in there and, the kids were like it wasn't like big news, but then we just did it in front of everybody and they're like, "What's happening?" And so there was even teachers that had no idea. And normally they're not allowed to have their phones out, but they let them pull their phones out for this. And so everybody's getting video of them shaving my head and, I'm in uniform getting my head shaved. And, honestly, they did such a horrible job. I looked like a diseased deer afterwards. And so I had to go get it cleaned up correctly. But for the most part, it's just a thing that, that's not a big deal to me. I didn't like my hair when it started getting into that grow out phase, like between where it's at.
You looked like a fire hydrant by the time they were done with you. You're already built like a 50-gallon drum, but to top that off with a rounded, shiny edge was a commitment.
Yeah, but I was told I have a nice shaped head, so it worked out.
Yeah, it's like the moon. But that's an example of the type of things that you and great officers do on the daily and great human beings, is just to not be about yourself and do something that's just fun and break up the monotony of life's stress and strife and do something cool and fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of, strife, speaking of challenges and things that are of growth, you went to some kind of man camp in the last year.
Man camp. No, and I've mentioned this a couple times on here. It's called the Man of War Crucible, and it was developed by a guy who was a cop down in Southern Florida, and he's working at the police academy, and he's seen these guys come in that were just weak-willed people, and they're quitting during scenarios or quitting during middle of what they're doing, and realizing you can't quit. Starts looking at this across the board, across the country, and maybe even around the world, and seeing these people, these men specifically, who would quit and were just quitting on their families, quitting on their children, on their wives, on their marriages, on their businesses, quitting on themselves, and not being the men that God called them to be, but also being the men that the world needs, and America specifically needs. And so he says, "I want to start this society for men, to build them up. And in order to be a part of the society, you need to go through what's called the crucible." We all know a crucible is a thing that melts down the impurities in whatever you're trying to refine, whatever metal you're trying to refine, gold or whatever. And so then it brings out the pure version of that thing. Well, that is what the crucible does for the man. You go through, it is one of the most difficult things that is, that one I've ever done, more so than even Marine Corps boot camp. But it's a civilian version of Navy SEAL training. And it's so difficult, so hard to do, that people quit. They have a 40% attrition rate. They'll go through and we started out with 33 in our group. we ended with 21. And you quit. Guys were just quitting. They would quit on themselves. They paid money for this thing, and they would quit, non-refundable. And they would not put out the effort that they needed to put out to build themselves up. The thing that was explained to me is that when I'm trying to figure out how much the cost would be, they're like, well, what are you willing to invest in yourself? Make an investment in yourself. And that's exactly what it is. And you're investing in the person you are, the man you want to be. So when you get done with it, and it's 5 days, Florida wilderness, way up by the Alabama border. It's structured, but it's not like Naked and Afraid or anything like that. But you are just physically wiped, mentally wiped, emotionally and spiritually just drained by the end of this 5 days. You have nothing left to give. I remember when I got done, my wife and I were walking around Pensacola because it's, like I said, it's in Florida. So she showed up, she came down to Pensacola, and I was able to get done and meet her in Pensacola. We stayed in a hotel there. And we just walked from the hotel to a restaurant, and I could barely walk because it just hurt so bad. Everything was physically just bruised everywhere. And you just get done with that. It was the whole idea is to build men to be better husbands, fathers, business leaders, visionaries, you name it, to be better at what it is. Because your job as a man, as a husband, as a father, is to guide and lead your family. Your job my job as a police officer is to be a leader in my community. Because this is our city that we are charged with protecting, and the people within it, whether you live here or not. If you're in our city, we're charged with protecting you. And so that's my job. And that's what I do, and that's what I have to focus on. So I remember going to the airport, and I'm getting ready to go, and I've got my big old rucksack filled with, all the stuff I'm going to take with me. And there was a group of people that were going to another training for work. You were one of them. You were getting ready to go to Chicago, I believe. And you'd help me actually train a little bit to get in shape for this thing. And I said, hey, you want to go with me? And you were like, oh, I so much I'd rather go with you to man camp than to sit in a conference for 4 days and just be bored with speakers. But I thought, you know what? Sometimes that's cool, depending on what the topic is. And I can guarantee everything that I'm going to go do is not cool, not super fun. But it's just the building up, the testing of yourself, the testing your mettle, the knowing your resolve, the knowing your limits, to knowing yourself and your relationship with God. That's what it did. And that's what it built in me. So I know if I can get through that, if I can go through that challenge, what else is out there that I can absolutely conquer and not have to worry about wondering if I'm capable or if I'm able or I'm what it takes to do it.
Mm-hmm. And while many people would take the opportunity to, I have a few extra $1,000. I'm going to get a new truck. I'm going to get a new boat or new toy, or step something up materially for fun, for comfort, for the way things look. You chose the route that is more difficult, one that is discomfort.
Yeah.
And the reason being, and I think it's important to discern, is that you're not looking at some narcissistic venture of self-improvement and self-promotion for people to say, oh, look what Ken's done, but for an absolute inside-out remodel, refinement, iron sharpens iron moment, where you're taking an opportunity to improve yourself, not so that you get the benefit of being better, but that others get the benefit of Ken being better.
Yeah.
And that's like I said, an important discernment. And I see that. So it would be easy for people to point fingers out of jealousy or other reasons and say, that's stupid, or why would you go do that? Or, you paid money for that. But no, it's like you went and invested in yourself, but not for yourself. You invested in yourself to be better for others.
Yeah. And that's, and like you said, that is a distinction. You gotta think about, I took my own vacation. We get 4 weeks a year, and taking 2 of those weeks and doing that I could be spending with my wife or my family or whatever. And I went with a bunch of guys that I just met, and we're going in there and getting our butts kicked. Mm-hmm. What are you getting after it? So the other question is, what do you get after that? What do I get after it? What do you mean? I mean, are you getting inducted into this thing and there's going to be there's no, whatever comes after is what I provide, whatever I build off of this thing. So I can build myself, so then I can help lead people, I can help guide people. I can be there for others. I can be the thing that is able to help protect others.
Mm-hmm. And, when one gets to a point of breaking point where they feel like quitting and giving up, you have that to look back on and say, what did I do when I felt like giving up before? Mm-hmm. And then you don't have to look far to remember, I went through a very significant challenge and this is what I did then.
Right.
So you have that to draw from, and also share that with the kids.
Yeah.
Of the metaphor to that how did you get through that last time when you went through something hard? And so you have that very tangible experience. In life, you started out with a topic of fear, and I'm curious today at 47?
I'll be 48 next month.
48 next month. What is it you're afraid of?
One of the biggest things, I mean, we all have our fears of, of whatever. One of the biggest ones that sits there with me is, what if I do life and I live my life and I don't make a difference? What if everything I've done is for nothing? That all these years of trying to help others, or trying to build myself up, or trying to be a good cop, or trying to be a good father, husband. What if I get taken out, or I die, and nobody has anything to draw from, and I leave nothing for anybody else? No lessons, no understanding, no spiritual guidance, no wisdom, no nothing. That nothing that I did mattered. That's my biggest fear, is not having done something and made a difference. That's probably my biggest fear.
Mm-hmm. So you're married, you're a father, a grandfather.
Yeah.
A veteran police officer, a veteran in general, a Marine. You've endured shootings, death. You've seen children die, literally. You've seen the worst of the worst calls, and many people have these cliches of what they think a cop is.
Yeah.
Oh, don't pull me over. You want a donut? These silly, stupid things that people just put in a box. You're a cop. You must think this and do this.
Right.
And you can see just from the little bit of time we spent that there's so much depth to all of our police officers, all of our first responders, all of these heroes that you've had on have some depth that go beyond just the image that people portray and think of. And so when you go through and you look at, okay, I've been a husband for a while now, I'm starting to get this. And I know what's important in marriage. I've been a dad, and I know what's important about being a dad. You were a dad of toddlers, you were a dad of teenagers, and now you're a dad of adults. And the seasons always change. It's
so weird.
As soon as you get a 20-year-old, it's like, well, I've never been a father of a 20-year-old before, but here I am.
You become their friend, man, which is cool. But you're still their guider. You're still
whole different deal. And so
still come to you for advice and everything.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
And so to look at all of that holistically, of the being that you are, and this, I think it's an enemy's voice that creeps in. Will it all be for nothing? Fear. And it's not necessarily what have you done and was it worth it, but who have you done it for?
Yeah.
And who gets the credit?
Yeah.
So speak on that as far as the holistic journey that you've had, who it's for, and reflect on that.
I used to think I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know who I'm doing it for. I'm just doing it because that's what's expected. And I remember there was a an officer that we work with. Actually, he was on here. You guys know Archie Leidy. And he asked me this question. He goes, "Hey, have you ever read this book?" And it was a book that he had been reading at that time, is What to Say When You're Talking to Yourself. And he says, you can't go through life thinking what other people want you to think. And he is, unfortunately, sometimes you do that. And he was very open and honest with me, and he was not wrong. And he says, sometimes you go through wanting to, you think or you do think that you think people want you to do or think. He goes, you can't do that. You have to do what you want to do, and you have to do what you know is right. And so there was a time that I used to just go through life like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do, because that's what I was told. But then for whatever reason, little things would shine light. Hey, I want to do this. Oh, like go in the Marine Corps? Yeah, that's what I want to do. Okay. Hey, I want to be a police officer. How come? Because I want to be a police officer. And then, some people would say, oh, because you want to wear polyester all the time or whatever. I said, no, why don't you just be a postman? I said, no, that's not it. There's more to it. And for whatever reason, I knew what I wanted. But once I get into it, this is what is expected of me. This is what I'm supposed to think, and this is what I'm supposed to do. And I didn't want to do those things. And so so there was always this push and pull back and forth of what's expected, what I think is expected, and then what I want to do as well. And so I've more recently, I've gotten to the point where I know what I want to do, and I can't have the victim mentality. I know who I am. I know what I've done. I know where I've been. I know what's expected. And if I don't do that, I can articulate why I'm not doing that. But I want to make sure that I can do what I'm needed to do, but then be there for other people. There's just something that's inside of me that tells me that not my passion, but my why, the reason I'm here on this planet. Because we all ask that question, why am I here, God? And I know I've asked that question too when I was younger, but I know now is for other people. And it's just, I know it, that God put me here for other people. Now, does that mean I'm always happy to see other people and want to do things for them? No, because I need to shut down, and I need to get away from some people sometimes. And I need to remember my why, because that's just what God has put on my heart to do. But because that's one of the questions that gets asked, when you get hired as a police officer, why do you want to be a police officer? And everybody has this, oh, I want to help people, but why? I don't know. And so you have a deeper reason. And so you have to have a solid reason of why. And this is something I talked with Brooke Johnson about when he was on here. He had a solid why. He went through I said, when that time comes when people are mean, they're nasty, they're evil, they're horrible, they're spiteful, they're just bad people. Why do you want to still help them? And you got to think beyond of just what I want to do, because there's going to be a point where you don't want to help people anymore. And so he explained why he wanted to. I have an explanation as well, and it's something that's just been on my heart since I was a little kid, and it's just something that I think it's just a thing that God put in there that you need to put out for other people because somebody did it for you. And so I get to go do that, and you see the joy on people's face when you serve other people, and that's leadership. Servanthood is leadership. Whether you do it for your wife, or you do it for your kids, or you do it at work, or you do it at church, or you do it, whatever you do, your servanthood is your leadership. And people see that in who you are when you are able to put others first. And that becomes your why. And then that becomes your reasoning. Because if you're listening to what God told you to do, then you're going to do it.
Yeah. That's well said. As you digest all that, you brought it back around to God, and that's where we, you and I, we share that bond of being believers. And I think there's In Ephesians 6, it talks about the whole armor of God. And we have that tangible, real armor that we put on, our bulletproof vest, and in a tactical sense, at times helmets and the sword. Maybe change that out for a rifle or a pistol, but we have to carry certain tools, a big gun belt, big boots, things like that. And you put on all the armor, and the helmet represents salvation, because we have these arrows shot at us that want to take away that thought that, there's something different about you once you become saved. Once you go Romans 10:9, and I confess with my mouth and believe with my heart that Jesus Christ died on the cross, rose again. That he did that for me, took on my sins. And so at the very core and the depth of that Christianity and that walk, there's something that's always deeper in principle than the bad days of work. You can't take that away. You could take away my job. You could take away my house. In the case of even Job, you watch, take away family. But you can't take away the love of Christ. You can't take away salvation and that helmet that you got sitting here on the table.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, and I think in that servant leadership is certainly an admirable form of leadership, and workplace in government is not always the place to, like you said, proselytize or go out and be preachy, Bible thumping, and share the word every opportunity you get. Although it is an attractive thing to do when you when you have that door opened, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But there are ways that you are able to motivate, inspire, and become like a next level transformational leader from where you're at as well, by just sharing in the way you behave and the way you walk through life is like, what is it about this guy? And I want to follow and emulate that. I want that to be, not only are you a role model, but I want to be this guy for this reason, because these principles are deeper and richer than, he has a great house, or he has an awesome truck, or he's really funny,
right? Or
clearly, devilishly handsome.
You're talking about yourself, got it?
Sure, but there are things that I think on the deeper and perhaps the most important level on earth that we can do is like, if I know, like, I have the antidote for poison, sin, and I don't share it with you, I'm withholding something from you. And so at some point there's that balance of, I want to share this, and it's not my place to do that right here, right now.
Right.
And, just being faithful, like, if that door's to be open, it'll be open. God's got a bigger plan than me, and he knows a lot more than I do about this stuff. I'm just a knucklehead. So when you're willing to be used by him, and you have those opportunities for transformation in the way you live your life to share with others, those moments come. How do you balance that in the workplace? You mentioned the open doors and things like that, but let's talk about your peers on the peer level. The people you work with in the department, they're broken, they're hurting, they are suffering from depression, anxiety, divorce, sometimes diving into the bottle. Our profession is riddled with people who are the walking wounded. And we can point them to the gym, we can point them to the shrink. But at some point, it's like, here's something tangible I have for you. When do you seize those opportunities to follow that nudge?
Well, I've mentioned this before on here. There's a point where your job is to develop relationships with people. And that's what, like I said, we're on this planet for other people. So in order to do that, you develop relationships. If you go through and you're not paying attention to the people around you, you're not in a relationship with them. So when you walk down the hallway and you say, hey, how are you today? Do you really mean, how are you today? Or are those just words to fill the weird awkwardness as you pass by another person? And so you develop relationships. When you develop relationships with other, you, especially in this job, where you may very well be relying on this person for your life. It doesn't matter who they are, whether it's the call taker in records, or it's the call taker in dispatch, or the administrative assistant down in the admin hallway. Doesn't matter who they do a job that supports you and what you do. And so you don't have to worry about, hey, my paycheck's working because the administrative assistant did her job really well. And I don't have to worry about not having enough information because the call taker did their job and got it to me. And I don't need to worry about And as opposed to just trying to figure this thing out by myself. No, there's relationships with everybody. Now that's even closer to the people that you're actually on the street with. That relationship of as you're doing it, you guys are both in good shape. Now, if you're developing that relationship, when you go and you do your day-to-day, you'll notice when that other person is not at their best, when they're struggling, when they're drinking, or there's problems at home, or whatever the case may be. You have this relationship with this person to the point that you'll see them outside of their normal. You'll see them outside of their the average every day that they are. And once you do see them out of that way, you can then talk to them and ask them questions because you've developed a relationship. You have an opening to that. You have an opening that maybe somebody else does not. And then you can sit there and say, hey, I noticed that this has happened. You okay? Everything all right? Well, yeah, everything's fine. And then you should have, if you have the relationship, you can call them out. Are you sure about that? Because I don't know if it's accurate because things seem to be a little bit off.
You have a calibration of where they stand and what normal is for them. Correct. Because of that relationship.
Correct. And so when you do that, you can have the in that somebody else doesn't. But that's also the part where you may not just start going into, Bible verses. Hey, this will help you. No, but if you have a relationship with the Lord and you have that discernment to what is right, what is wrong, you might have the right words to say that will work for them. The other side is that you will be able to be aware of the things that are happening. And that's how you can have that growth. And then once you help them through that issue, or you are with them, you might not help them, but you might be with them as they're going, hey, I'm here for you, anything you need. And then you see that they're struggling or whatever. Hey, let's go get a sandwich. Let's go get a coffee. Let's go, whatever. That you're spending time with them. You're willing to sacrifice your own time for these other people. There's that being there for other people that people take for granted. We don't realize how important that is when somebody asks, hey, will you be there for me? Yeah, okay, fine. No, you can't look at it like that. If they're asking you to be there for them, they want you. They're not just asking for anybody. It's like you're not going to go down to the burger joint and ask the kid that's running the fry machine, hey, you want to be the best man at my wedding? It doesn't work that way. You do it with people you develop relationships with. So that's why it's important. If somebody asks you, hey, are you doing okay? They need to know because they have an invested interest in you. And so that's what I look at is develop those relationships. Then you'll know where the openings are.
Yeah.
And listen for God to say, hey, right there. And he might direct your path to that point and direct your voice and your words.
Probably particularly valuable to understand that in the peer support rule.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why we have peer support.
Yep. And so I get to do that as well. And I'm there for guys and girls who are just struggling and may or may not be able to move forward. And it's not just after major incidences. You could be struggling with like I said, your family stuff, your wife, your kids are, on the outs, and you're not able to focus and be your homeostasis self. And that's where peer support comes in, and be there with them.
So you fired up this 100 episodes ago, this podcast, and you've had a lot of great men and women on here who've shared some profound wisdom, entertaining stories, touching, moving, and very personal triumphs and losses. Mm-hmm. What have been some of the takeaways of some of the people as you reflect on the guests you've had on the show of who have you that really stands out, resonates with you? And I know you would say all of them because they're all very special, but what are some ones that just right now they come to the top of your head?
Yeah. There's always good ones. And I've mentioned a couple already. Yours was fantastic.
Clearly.
Yeah. John Hartle, who I mentioned already on here. there's one guy, Chris Hoyer, having his story come on here. He went through this horrible thing. He watched his friend get murdered in front of him while they were both on a call, and he had to go and take this guy out. And he's got it outlined in his book, When That Day Comes. I developed a good relationship with him that, I've been down to his house down in near Oceanside, and just a great guy. He and his wife, or his girlfriend right now, Natalie, just fantastic people. There are a couple other guys that are they have their own podcasts that they're just in other places in the world, that have been on here, and I've been able to develop relationships with them. I could call some of these people up. Hey, I got a question for you, whatever. And they'll answer it, just because that's the people that they are. They're of the same mind where they want to see other people succeed in life, and they know they can't take it with them. So they're going to share it with them. If they can offer advice, or they can give their 2 cents or help somebody out of a situation, that's what they're going to do. There's Dave Grossman, there's Tim Larkin, there's Buck Savage, there's, the celebrity guys. I say celebrity guys. These guys, I've read their books so much before I ever met them to have them on the show, that it was amazing to actually have them on the show. But I have a lot of these people, and you see a lot of these guys, they'll have these stories about these things that happened to them and the trauma that they went through, and why they're maybe no longer police officers. And I mean, I can name off every single one of them if I wanted to, and we'd be here for that much longer. But it's not so much the trauma, the problems that they went through, the struggles. It was how they overcame these issues afterwards. And then what they're doing with that knowledge, that they took that, and they're starting foundations, or they're writing books, or they're helping people get through these problems because they went through these major traumas, saw these horrible things, and now they had to process it themselves, whether it was physically or mentally, some of them very physically, that they get through these things. And then now they have to try to figure out how they're going to navigate life. And they come back with just ready to just own it and help and serve other people. And that's, I think, part of why I do this, or why I want to do that as well. Because I saw how righteous that is, that giving back from your own pain, your own personal hell, and giving back to people and seeing them now succeed in life. Because if they don't do it, who's going to?
So you surround yourself, in a sense, with these contagiously amazing people who are focused not on their comfort, but on character.
Yeah.
And so I think that you have that unique position of being in a very blessed position to be around people who have stories of triumph through character, and that can be contagious and encouraging to not just hold it inside, but to share it with your audience. And the opportunities for more heroes will undoubtedly come with many more and impressive people that share their stories, not for the sake of puffing up their heads, but to share stories. And our species have been storytellers for many years, and it's important to share those stories. What's next for Ken?
Well, I am one of the things that like I said earlier, that I'm that good things are happening, is I have started my own public speaking business. I have a website now for it and everything else like that. My intent is to go out and share this idea of struggling through adversity and building yourself on that. And so, if you know of somebody that needs people to speak at their events or whatever, I'm available for that. I'm doing that more. And this is in the super infant stage, and it might just be an idea right now, but I'm actually considering writing a book. And it's just a lot of lot of things that I'm putting together, and I've got a little bit of a manuscript written, and it's just amazing to me that I can do that, because that's not the little Kenny who was not a writer, who could barely spell, who didn't get good grades, who was always feeling like he was behind everybody else. And if it hadn't been for somebody like John Hartle to say, no, you're just as good as the rest of us. I mean, I don't know if I'd be where I am, but that's where that's part of the idea where I'm going. I mean, my intent is I want to get back. I want to leave a legacy worth that my children, my grandchildren can be proud of, that I can say, hey, I did that. I know I can't take it with me, but I know I can help people along the way and show them what it is that God gave me to do here while I'm here.
Mm-hmm. So the public speaking, the genre of adversity and things you've been through, in our line of work, you can't look left or right without seeing somebody who's endured adversity, and your position of growth and life's walk certainly has its unique moments of overcoming adversity.
Yeah.
From childhood to military to divorce to your professional walk of didn't make it, kept fighting, went up the chain and worked your way up, and then have dreams and ambitions professionally yanked away and thrust in another direction. And yet you lift your chin, you move forward, you get your head shaved in front of an assembly.
Hundreds and hundreds of kids, yeah.
And you get out and you tell your story, and not for the sake of selfishness and selfish ambition, but to help others. And so that is by definition what is heroic. And for that, thank you and salute you, and appreciate you taking the time to let me interview you and turn the microphone around a little bit today.
Yeah, I thank you for coming in and doing it. I mean, if it wasn't, honestly, I could get some guys to do it, and there's some other guys but they don't live around here.
You were desperate. I get it.
Yes, that's true. No, that I can do it on Zoom, but you and I have a good relationship, and you know the questions to ask, and you have, like I said, discernment. You can see where things need to go, and you can understand the gravity of situations sometimes, and I thought, there's not a better guy. You've been on the show, and you're just a 10 in my book. So, and I know a lot of people think that same thing. A lot of people look at you and they're like, that's the guy. I don't know anybody that doesn't like you. And so, except for a couple people, but they're in prison, so it's fine. So,
well, it's good to be questioning somebody on this side of, I guess, the wall, because I've interrogated people for 25 years, and so this has been a little bit more fun. It's just going to let you ramble and work yourself into a corner, and then you do all the work. I just sit here and watch it happen.
Right. And that was one of the things that, when are we going to, people would ask me, when are we going to hear about you? I mean, and I'm like, I don't know. So I figured the episode 100 would work just fine. So future episodes, we're going to get interviews, but I'm also going to start breaking it up like I did previously, past 10, 20 episodes, where there'll be shorts. I'll have a couple shorts, mixed in here and there, but we'll still have the interviews. We'll still have people coming in, and just, I want to do it more. I get pretty busy. School and work and everything else gets busy, and everybody, and so sometimes, unfortunately, the podcast has to take a back seat. It's not that I want to, but there's a point where I have to sleep, and so but my intent is to obligate myself to the podcast, because I know there's a lot of people that like it, they want to hear it, and they'll ask me, hey, when do we get another one? Well, I will do everything I can to make you guys more of them. So,
well, keep it up. You're doing a great job.
Well, I appreciate it. There's one question that you need to ask me before we finish up here. Do you know what that is?
Are you buying breakfast?
Well, no. Oh, it's afternoon.
Are you buying lunch?
I can buy lunch. That's no problem. No, there's another question.
Any final words as we head out?
No, not that question.
Oh, well.
There's the, I'll go ahead and ask it. It's, if you had a time machine and you go back in time.
Yeah, that one.
You want to finish it?
No, you're already on a roll.
If you go back in time.
What would you change?
No, if you can meet yourself as a little kid?
What would you tell yourself?
Would you be able to, as your little self, look at yourself as you are now and say, that's who I want to be when I grow up? And I would say yes. I would say that I would want to do that. I would want to be you. And I would say back to myself, I have some work to do still. So maybe I'll meet you in a couple years and show you where I'm at still. But right now, who I am, my little 8-year-old self, 7-year-old self, yeah, I think he'd ask why am I not taller? But otherwise, I think he would be, I think I am who I would want to be.
Yeah, you have demonstrated and lived a life worth living. And you share your life with the love of your life. You have 2 children that you're very proud of. You can't know you without knowing your children. So without all the turns in the road, they wouldn't be with you. Mm-hmm. And that's clearly a foundation worth celebrating every turn and trial along the way.
Right. So,
well done.
So if you guys are interested in more of the podcast, you can always find our previous episodes on www. I don't know if you have to say that anymore. You just say the name of it, but nevertheless, the What's a Hero podcast.buzzsprout.com. Find all our previous episodes on there. It also has links to, iTunes, Stitcher, every other podcast platform. And then that podcast platform, you go in there, subscribe to the episode or subscribe to the podcast. It'll let you know when new ones come up. But if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. And if you haven't done that, or if you have done that and you haven't left a review, go leave a review. If you're new to the podcast, go leave a review on whatever episode you listen to. And I talked to a lady the other day who said, I listened to a couple of your episodes the other day. Cool. Did you leave a review? Oh, no. Well, it's good because what it does is it then adds to the algorithm. And so if they know that, hey, some people like this, they can go out and share it with other people, and the algorithm will start getting other people involved. So do that. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook, and you find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me at kenfrownfelter.com. That is my public speaking website. You can go there, share. If you know somebody that is setting up conferences or something like that, have them go on there, look into that. You can get a hold of me that way. Or you can obviously get a hold of me on Instagram or Twitter or any of those social medias. And I'm on there as well. I will, I'm open to be contacted there as well. So either way, you find us on there and have a good time with it, man. Enjoy the show. Mike, I appreciate you coming on and being here. It's absolute honor to have you come and ask me the questions, because those are good questions that I couldn't even have asked. And I thought about it. So
likewise, my honor.
So, do you have any final words for these fine people out there?
No, I just encourage each and everybody to look at their why, like we touched on today.
Yeah.
And what is heroic? And what does that mean? It's not TV. It's deeper principles that are timeless, that are selfless, that are enwrapped in service. And when you explore your why, when you are introspective and growth-minded, even then, why are you growth-minded?
Yeah.
Why are you introspective?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you growing? And if the answer is it's for others, you're on the right track.
Right. And not for them to be impressed by you, but for their growth. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you once again for coming on, and we will see you maybe on a future episode for something.
We'll see.
Maybe you have a You might be able to get a job as a guest host at some point again.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much for the last 100 episodes. I've got, I don't know, man. I can go, I'd say 15,000 downloads because you guys download the episodes. Don't just listen to them on the website. Download them, and we'll keep bringing them. So until next time, for Mr. Michael Vorberg, I have been Ken Frownfelter, and this has been the What's a Hero podcast. We are clear.